call to order. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Good evening. Mayor Troopman,
Here.
Vice Mayor Johnson Sardella,
Here.
Here.
Commissioner Tudor,
Here.
Commissioner Wise,
Here.
Stand for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any additions, deletions, or withdrawals from the agenda?
Yes, I do.
Commissioner Samaria?
Okay, these are just basically discussions, so they don't have to go on forever discussions.
You have one, so you have one more. One more, just one more piece.
Only one?
There's two per commissioner, yeah. If we have time, Commissioner Sir, we can see what we can do, but at the moment, this is a packed agenda.
Okay, there's two of them that, since I'm going to take two, I want to have, because that's not a discussion, right? It's not following stuff that I have on the agenda. One item, I'm saying I'm only allowed to have one item.
That is the process, but go ahead and put on 12.
Okay, the one that I want to take that has been discussion on the proper procedure of set schedule commission meetings for answering emails.
Okay. We'll make that 12E. Okay? Under new business. Anybody else for additions, withdrawals? None heard? Okay. The only thing I will mention is during updates, I'm probably going to give just a 1 minute on the Tallahassee trip for the updates. E. Okay? Okay. Village Attorney, would you be so kind as to read the decorum rules?
I'm terribly sorry. I did not hear what you're saying. I'm having a little hard time with the acoustics in here.
If you could just read the decorum rules.
Thank you. Be happy to. In accordance with the provisions of, all comments must be addressed to the commission as a body and not to individuals. Any person making impertinent or slanderous remarks or become boisterous while addressing the commission shall be barred further audience before the commission by the presiding officer unless permission to continue or again address the commission is granted by the majority vote of the commission members present. No clapping, applauding, heckling, or verbal outbursts in support or in opposition to a speaker or his or her remarks shall be permitted. No signs, placards shall be allowed in the commission chambers. Please mute or turn off your cell phones or pagers at the start of the meeting. Failure to do so may result in being barred from the meeting. Persons exiting the chambers shall do so quietly. Thank you.
Also, one reminder for public comments, we are having a variance, so if you're here to speak on that variance, I would suggest you wait until you're sworn in to speak on it, or your testimony will not be counted. Is that correct?
That is correct. You have to speak during the course of the public hearing.
If you can talk during public comments, but if you do, it just won't be counted as part of the testimony. Okay? With that, we'll open the floor to public comments.
Good evening, Roxana Ross, 11166 Griffin Boulevard. My main focus tonight is a public records request I made last month at last month's meeting on the 12th of February. We got the announcement for the special meeting on Sunday afternoon, the 10th, and a cryptic agenda showing discussion item decision on attorney. A couple of my commissioners who I wrote back and said they were reviewing additional documents in preparation for the discussion on the decision on attorney. And so at the meeting I made a public records request for all communications and documents provided to the commission and leading up to the forming of that agenda. I have not received a fulfillment of that request, and although it was for a very limited window of time from February 7th, the date that was of the letter that was the impetus for that agenda item, to the 12th, the day of the meeting, that's 7 days inclusive, I finally, 3.5 weeks later, after the initial request, got a response from the clerk with an invoice estimating $147.75 as the cost for filling that request, which is a window of 6 or 7 days. I believe that those charges are arbitrary, capricious, and designed to discourage public records requests. They may border on extortion and be a fraud on the public. The village has very specific outlines on how and where and what charges could be made from the village administration, and as well as this Florida statutes. The village charter at section 4.03A requires services or user fees for municipal services to be set by ordinance. That last ordinance was 2014-8, which consolidated fees into a master fee schedule. That fee schedule was established with Resolution 2014-70, and the most recent iteration was approved at 2016-26. Nowhere in the village ordinance or resolutions is there authorization for the IT fees that are being charged and additional charges in that invoice. I am aware of Florida statutes, and it does allow for some fees to be charged when a request is extensive, and I do not believe that a request for information in a 5 or 6 or 7 day window can possibly be interpreted as extensive. I'd like to know when the commission approved these charges, when they became effective, under whose authority, because they were not aired in public and they were not implemented according to the village charter. And I'd appreciate a response, please.
Barbara Kuehl, 111th Street. Just a list of a couple of different things that I'm concerned about. The meetings that are not advertised well in advance. I don't know if it's an ordinance, if it's a resolution. Someplace there was a timeline of how far in advance the meeting had to be posted. Otherwise, the meeting was not allowed to continue. Now it just seems that meetings are scheduled, nobody knows about them, they put them up, some kind of notice a day in advance. Also, lately, every time I turn around, another meeting or workshop is canceled. We never had that. I don't know what this is, some virus going around. You shouldn't be if you have to cancel something, sometimes there are emergencies, but what's really galling is when meetings are canceled without any explanation. And just saying, well, 3 commissioners couldn't make it, that really isn't good enough. Which brings me to the next point, is when a commissioner isn't at a commission meeting, you are supposed to give a reason, the clerk should give a reason why that commissioner isn't there, and the commission should decide if that's a valid reason, if it's excusable, not excusable. In our charter, there's a way of evaluating commissioners and asking them to leave if they have missed a lot of meetings. The only way you can evaluate that is if you have something on record. Why didn't they make it? Was it just because they got a little tied up at work, or were they run over by a car? It makes a difference, and the public should know. That's how we evaluate who we're going to vote for. When a resident writes an email, takes the time to write an email to our village manager, I expect a response, even if it's some automatic response. Thanks, I got the email. I'm here, I read it. Too many people in this community on Nextdoor and just talking to friends have said they never get a response from our manager about serious issues unless it's a compliment. Then I get a response. And as a commission, you are the ones who are in charge of the village manager. You decide to keep him, to let him go. Is this the image we want? And I don't think it's very polite when the manager cannot take time to acknowledge an email. In his weekly reports, many times he mentions he's very busy dealing with neighbors' problems. Well, when I write to him, it's because I have a problem. I want an answer. Another thing that this village has not done, and to me it falls under the village
I'm
manager.
sorry, can you finish up, please? Thank
Okay.
you.
Is sending out a list of code infractions, things the villagers need to know so that they don't get violations. It would help the code officer. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bob Anderson, 11th Place, 119th Street. I see you're going to have a discussion, 12B, on cell phones. There's a cost to these phones. Has not been budgeted. We haven't been reimbursed by FEMA. And if we have some extra money, it needs to go back into the reserves or be using it for something that the residents will see. I don't understand why the commissioners need to have cell phones paid by the village. It never was done before. It wasn't even talked about when this budget that you're working with now was being formulated. And all of a sudden, partly through this budget, there's money to be available to have cell phones in a plan that you're paying a monthly plan for. I think it's a complete waste of money, and I think it sets a bad precedent. And there's so many other things the city needs. Use the money for that or put it in the reserves.
Thank you.
Chuck Ross, 11166 Griffin Boulevard. A lot of things I want to talk about have been covered. The improper cancellation of the March 5th meeting. 3 commissioners who mysteriously, all at once, had some reason they couldn't attend. We had a workshop on the 26th. At that workshop, I can't believe if everybody had some commitment that suddenly came up in 3 or 4 days, all at the same time. Unbelievable. I don't believe it. I don't understand it. And you do, as Barbara says, you need to provide an excuse for why you weren't here. The cell phone issue, Bob brought it up. I don't need to repeat what he said. I don't understand how you can just budget an item. I mean, have it an unbudgeted item, and something that should have been brought before the commission. The charges for the public records requests, one of our residents got a charge for $15,000 for a public records request that he made. Now, it may have been an extensive request, but that's absurd. 58,000 pages of documents? I would ask that if there are 58,000 pages of documents, you produce them at Village Hall and let that resident inspect them. There should be no charge for that, because public records are supposed to be made readily available. As far as the attorney's concerned, I still have a huge issue with how what I consider our existing attorney, John Herron, was without any explanation just passed over, and he changed firms. He changed firms from Gray Robinson to Fox Rothschild. Apparently so did a number of other partners in his firm. There's probably some change in structure there, but John Herron is the person that we hired, principally, not Gray Robinson. Lastly, I brought to the Commission's attention on a couple of occasions concerns about charter violations committed by the mayor. I read an email that showed that a legislative request that we were told was done after Hurricane Irma was in fact done on August 27th, almost two weeks before Hurricane Irma. I look to the Commission itself as the body that should take this up as an agenda item and evaluate whether or not there's any concerns or substance to the things that I've brought to their attention. You swore an oath to uphold our charter, and based on that oath, you should look into whether there, in fact, have any charter violations been committed. And I can provide evidence if you need to. They're in the public records.
I'm sorry, sir. Can you finish up?
Thank you. I'm done. Thank you very much.
Janie Anderson, 11th Place and 119th Street. And it's kind of interesting. Board members apparently are held to a higher standard in terms of attendance than our commission members, because if we're going to be absent, we've got to bring it up. It's got to be voted on as to whether it's an excused or not excused absence. We share with our fellow board members what the problem is. I'm not real clear on why board members would be held to a higher standard than you guys hold yourselves. As far as cell phones, let's face it, in a year with depleted reserves, with limited cash flow, with so many unmet needs, this is not the time for an unbudgeted item. Public records request, $15,000 and change. Oh, come on. Seriously? When the history of this city had been anything that could be provided via email, the resident wasn't even charged. Surely, yes, was it extensive? Work with the resident. Ask them, what are you really trying to prove? What do you really need? But just to capriciously send him a $15,000 estimate? I believe Florida state statutes are fairly clear that you cannot charge exorbitant fees, let alone a fee that's never been aired publicly.
Thank you.
MacDonald Kennedy, 11705 Northeast 11th Place. I'm going to complain about some stuff too, but first I have to say that there are some nice things happening in Biscayne Park, and I think they should be pointed out. The police department, I have found them under our new chief to be very responsive, taking action, and I'm seeing results, specifically on the street I live, which is Northeast 11th Place. I have complained for years about the speeding there and some parking issues on that street, and I never got anywhere with anyone in this village, including some of the people sitting on the dais. But we have a new police chief, and he's responding, and I want to say thank you for that. The art board had a really nice fair a couple of weeks ago. I thought that was really nice. It's one of the best things about this village is when the community comes together, and I thought that was a particularly good one. And I want to point out Parks and Parkways, who I think is doing a beautiful job in the village. You're doing some really nice stuff, Barbara and Dan and the other members, particularly around the log cabin, which I think looks great. So I think those things should be pointed out. Now, some other things aren't going so well, and I want to bring them to your attention as well. First of all, a zillion emails went out asking people to nominate themselves for boards, which I think is great, trying to encourage people to get involved. There were no deadlines on any of those emails. I emailed Roseanne several times and said, what is the deadline to nominate myself for a board? I didn't get a straight answer. Asked again. 3 times. I said, what is the deadline? Certainly there's a deadline to get a nomination in, and I got a very vague response. Get it in before the meeting in some reasonable amount of time, and I'll make sure it's there. Next thing I know, I get your agenda for this meeting, and all the nominees are on there. I didn't get my nomination in. How do you not have a deadline for people who are nominating themselves to be on a board? Come on, this is basic stuff. Is it incompetence? Is it you don't want people to nominate themselves? Really? It has the appearance of impropriety, and there's kind of a theme here to some of the things I want to say, and it's the appearance of impropriety, and you guys need to be aware of those things. The arbitrary meeting changes. Again, there's the appearance of impropriety. If there's not something shady going on, it starts to smell like it after a while. But you can't just move things around and expect people to participate in this village and really care when they can't show up for a meeting, when they don't know when meetings are going to be. I also made a request for some public information, and I got a ridiculous bill. Mine was not $15,000, but mine was way higher than it should have been based on some previous requests that I've made. And I have a specific question about it. I'd like Christian to answer this. Regarding these new charges, who decided on those charges and when? And specifically, were there since this all of a sudden just started happening, were there conversations between you and your staff and any elected officials, including the mayor, about the content of those requests, when and how much they would be charged for them? Again, it's the appearance of impropriety. Because one of my requests was specifically about the mayor. And I had made a request before and never was charged anything like I was told I would be charged for this request. The first time I asked for something about her, all of a sudden I get a crazy fee. So it doesn't pass the smell test after a while. Again, the appearance of impropriety, Christian. And I want to end really quickly.
I'm sorry, can you
with just
please
saying
finish
that
up, please? Thank
you guys are very well past due to have a conversation up here, a workshop, something about code enforcement. You're trying to write code, and none of you are code writers, and it's becoming very apparent. You shouldn't even
Thank
be
you,
trying.
sir. I'm sorry, I have to close
But
out.
it's time to have a conversation about enforcement,
Thank
and it
you.
needs to be a serious one.
Thank you. Any further public comments? Hearing none. For information updates, just briefly, I spent last Tuesday meeting with legislators in Tallahassee to support the 3 projects that this commission agreed to seek appropriations for. Road resurfacing, installation of a backup generator system for Village Hall, and lighting for the Ed Burke Recreation Center. I just want to thank our lobbyist, Dave Caserta, for ensuring we were able to meet with all the key legislators. We spent the day meeting with legislators and/or their assistants, highlighting the needs for our projects, and emphasizing that road appropriations was fully vetted and supported last year by both the House and Senate, although former Governor Scott vetoed all projects in the Transportation Committee last year, which is why the project was not funded. There is a new governor and members of the House and Senate. As many of you may know, frequently, the smaller cities are overlooked for the larger cities and their projects. I was encouraged by the receptiveness of everyone we spoke with, but this is very early in the process. We will keep the commission and residents informed. We will know sometime in May whether any of the 3 projects will be funded. That's my update. Anything, Manager?
Not this time, no.
I would like, I know we didn't vote on this, but if there's no objection for the consent agenda, would anybody object if we moved, because we have a packed schedule today, move 10A and 10E into the consent agenda? We don't have to, but I just thought it might expedite things.
No objection from me.
No objection? Commissioner Samaria?
Which one are you talking about?
10A is, it's the cars. One is the surplusing of one, and the other is accepting the donations.
My question is,
10A and 10E.
if you're moving 10B
No, 10A and 10E.
and 10B.
E.
Oh, E. Okay.
If there's no objection.
No, I have no problem with that.
Okay. With that in mind, we'll move those 2 items to the consent agenda, and with that, is there a motion to pass the balance of the consent?
I make a motion to pass the agenda.
The consent agenda, is there a
Consent
second?
agenda, Yes.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. With that, we'll move to resolution 10B. I'm going to ask the village attorney to go ahead and read 10B.
A resolution of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, ratifying the selection and appointment of board members to the Parks and Parkway Advisory Board, providing for an effective date.
Okay. Every March, we look at the boards and we vote on who the members will be. That is what's happening here. There will be 3 boards we'll be looking at: Parks and Parkway, Public Arts Advisory Board, and the Public Safety Advisory Board as well. I'll turn to my commissioners to see how they'd like to handle this. I know we have a ballot. That's how we did it last time. Any objection to that? Okay. Now, for Parks and Parkway, was there one more member, I believe? There was a late applicant?
You need to read the names of the applicants, please.
Okay. Okay. There are 6 applicants for the Parks and Parkway Advisory Board. Mercedes Diaz is a new applicant. Lynn Fisher is a reappointment. Daniel Keys is a reappointment. Barbara Kuehl is a reappointment. Randy Wagner is a reappointment. And Audrey McCullum is a new applicant.
Just to mention that Mrs. McCollum brought the application at the end of the afternoon, so...
She brought it in about 4 o'clock.
It's not on the
agenda.
On the website.
Do we have copies in case the public wants to see
Yes.
them? Thank you.
Madam Mayor, since the 6th is 5 plus 1 alternate, right?
Yeah, you can vote for, I believe you can vote for as many or as few as you, I mean, you can vote for 5, and then you could decide whether that one's an alternate.
5 plus, no, it's 5 plus an alternate.
Right, but we're circling this, and then the one we could then decide whether or not to appoint the alternate. I believe is how that's done. Correct?
You can vote for as many or as few as you.
No, it is. There's 6. So if I put all 6, that means I'm accepting one each.
With all 6, yeah.
Thought they were yours at first.
About the same age.
Yeah, about the same. Dover. That is cute. Really? Which one do you want? Oh geez, you might want to talk to me about that. That's not the problem. Things I eat that are not sauce. And no, I have other thoughts for you. You won't like it, but I'll tell you them anyway. You're going to blame the mayor for this too? I'm blaming everything else. Why not? For the Hampton lady. Do we want to go ahead and then while she's calculating? Or do you want to do one at a time? Commissioners, what would you like to do, one at a time or just continue and then while she's counting?
I think,
You want to do the tally now?
I think we can, while she's doing that, we can go to the second one.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that. Could you read the second resolution, Attorney Mandel?
A resolution of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, ratifying the selection and appointment of board members to the Public Art Advisory Board, providing an effective date.
There's a section for comments. You might have that opportunity to yeah.
Do you?
I don't mean, I don't know. See what you said, but.
Because the problem is, I can't see it. Oh. There's nothing on the book. Hanging up or anything?
We had a fight to get that TV in here, believe me.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, we had a real fight just to get that.
Oh, I imagine you did. Yeah. So this is designated, right?
It was, we renovated it or restored it 3 years ago after we built that building. And it was designated that.
Yes.
It's all original Duke and pine and
Yeah, they're not gonna, it'd be, yeah.
the one that
The only other thing is if somebody had a laptop.
Put the cheese right on top of that, right on top of that shelf there. When that's here,
we'd still have to run cables over there.
we run the cable for
You know, the word projector comes to mind. 90% of what is said is projected. I know.
Everything that's on the
It
TV is
doesn't get
right
any
there.
crazier, but it is what it is.
No, we had the police report.
Really?
I didn't get to see that.
Okay, next one. Village Attorney.
See it? You didn't give us a paper.
I'm sorry, Commissioner. Sorry. Village Attorney, can you read the next resolution, please?
Resolution, this is 10D. Resolution of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, ratifying the selection and appointment of board members to the Public Safety Advisory Committee. Public Safety Advisory Board, providing an effective date.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much.
I'm fine with
No, you can have all the fun on me.
this one.
Absolutely, sir.
It's in there, so. Oh, we want to show them, make sure there was
It's
no
nice.
who's liable if there's an issue. I actually have an issue, right, going in litigation. Representing jurisdiction by me that is having a problem right now. I have to.
While the clerk is compiling the votes, and then we'll announce everything and say who voted for whom. I just have a question for the village attorney and the village manager. We have 3 other boards. I know you were trying to get folks for the grant writing board that Commissioner Tudor had spearheaded. The ecology board, I know nobody's been on that for years, and the rec center board as well. I believe, according to our charter, we have to draft and adopt an ordinance if we are to sunset those boards. But I would like at least to bring up that conversation to decide what we should do with those 3 boards. Okay? So I'll ask for opinions from my fellow commissioners. Commissioner Tudor?
I thought the rec board was already dissolved by the past commissioner.
It was not. It has to be dissolved by ordinance, and we have not adopted or drafted an ordinance to do that. That is my understanding from the charter.
It is correct. What your charter provides is that you are obligated to take action via ordinance if you're going to adopt or amend an administrative regulation or establish, alter, or abolish a village office, department, board, agency, committee, or authority. So you would need to take that act as a properly noticed ordinance pursuant to your ordinance process.
Okay.
Excuse me. Before we do that, could we put out the word again and see if we can get more applications for the rec board? I'm on this commission, so I can't be on the rec board, but I think the rec board is a very important board, so if we could see, maybe we can get some more residents to participate on that.
I just don't. One of the challenges when we're small like this is how much we extend ourselves on boards and how many boards we want to make them effective. I was on the rec board myself, the ecology board myself. These can always be reenacted, or we can leave them dormant. I mean, these are discussion items for the commission, so I'll leave it to my fellow commissioners.
charter, I guess I don't personally see an issue of
Leaving them dormant?
no, either letting, because I'm not sure if they've been dormant or wasn't dissolved properly prior. How do we know whether or not there are residents that may be interested? If we're starting the process now, we might as well let people know about the boards, and if there's any interest, then we can have a proper discussion as to which ones need to be dissolved.
Okay, I just know by charter in March, we were supposed to address these boards. I know we sent out notices for the other boards because nobody's showed any interest in these boards for many years. I don't think that was done, but if you want to, if it's not objection among this commission, we can send out to see if anybody would like to be on these other boards, or we could decide to sunset them. I'm just a little concerned with overextending our staff. They're here every night, and I just am afraid we have a lot of boards, and I'm not sure what the intent of. Sometimes when we make boards, I guess we should look at the longevity of them. They do have a lifespan. It's very common to have us revisit these. It isn't in our charter. However, most cities do that. I'll defer to the village attorney. They oftentimes revisit and sunset boards and create new ones. Is that correct?
Depends on every jurisdiction's charter and how they set forth their boards. Your charter specifically allows this opportunity to change around boards through an ordinance, not through an amendment through your charter. So it's something that I would imagine that as your charter was developed, was thought through as to how these changes might be necessary, but it's certainly a policy issue as to whether or not you want to sunset a board or not, given the variety of factors.
If in order to sort of honor the sentiments of everyone on the commission, in order to give residents more time, as Commissioner Samaria and Commissioner Sardella are suggesting, do we have to do anything in order to table this decision until our meeting next month? Can we just postpone decisions on that? And then at that time, if we don't get enough, we can then discuss whether or not we sunset or just leave them dormant. But I'm going to say my personal self, I received one email about the board applications, and it wasn't an initial, hey, we're looking for people for the board. I actually spoke with our village manager. I don't know what mailing list I'm not on, but there were 2 sent out, and I received 1. So myself as a resident, I can say we're probably not communicating strongly enough as a communications professional, and because I'm offering to bring a higher level of communications to the village, I can say we probably don't communicate well enough. So if it's okay for us to wait until the next meeting to have that discussion, it's fine with me. I just want to make sure that doesn't require any special
Do we need a motion, because according to the charter, we're supposed to look at that in March?
Yeah, we don't want to violate the charter.
If you don't have enough applicants to go forward to serve a board, notwithstanding what your charter provision is, I mean, that becomes an impossibility. There's no way to make something happen when it doesn't. My recommendation would be is to go and maybe make either one more effort, or alternatively make a motion today to put, you can't obviously today look at an ordinance. That needs to go through a process to be able to change anything. So given the concerns I'm hearing over communication issues, it would be my recommendation to maybe have one more bite at that apple to see if you can't fill these boards, and then I think it would be appropriate to make a decision as a city that having these boards, since you cannot fill them, you can't properly exercise your duties to fill those, and you can move forward at that point in time.
Madam, is it a requirement that we have to dissolve the board? Why can't we just leave it in limbo until, we get other residents that might in the future might want to do it? I mean, do we have to dissolve it, is what I'm asking you.
No, because it takes an ordinance to form them. The question, I think, maybe since you're going to be doing a giant session anyway here in a little while, maybe we can wait till we decide what direction we're heading to see whether or not we need to have the boards. I think that may be and what kind of boards that might be more productive to the visioning piece. So that may be a time to look at it, is my thought. Commissioner, you haven't spoken. Do you have anything to add?
Part of the problem with the village has always been the communication aspect. I talked to, I spoke to my neighbors in prior times about some of these boards, and I've gotten the same response. Why email? I didn't know about a board. So I think we do have an issue with communication. with that said, I think we're going to have to look, I honestly think as we become more of a professionally run city, we should be looking at all of our boards and deciding what we want to do with those boards, continue, if they want to be a modification or what. Because, you know, some of these boards, their purpose is advisory boards to the commission. So I think, you know, we have to have that discussion to decide whether or not we've kind of outgrown some of these boards now that we have some people in some of these positions in the city. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I believe El Portal no longer...
They have a big board that they have one big board that actually addresses most everything.
Yeah, because they've kind of gone away from all these small individual boards that are spread out. So I don't see... I would be fine with trying to get out some additional communication, readdressing this at the next commission meeting. Okay. But I do think that at some point in time, we're going to have a discussion about all the boards and decide, you know, do they serve the purpose we need them to serve? Okay.
That was, when you told me I only had 2 items, that was the item that I was going to put on the discussion about the
Well, see, and it got on. That's fabulous.
No.
Got on anyway. It's on, it actually was already on. It was part of, even though it's not part of the resolutions, it is part and parcel to what we have to look at. So is there anything else you'd like to add, Commissioner Samaria?
Well, if I remember carefully in the past, commissioners were able to, well, we required to appoint 1 member from each board.
And then it was changed to consensus.
Yeah, consensus to anybody, picking anybody. And I think my goal is I'd like to get back to that. I'd like to get back where a commissioner picks 1 member from each board. And the reason for that is it makes the commission be more involved. I'll give you a perfect example. When I got on Parks and Parkway, I was appointed by Commissioner Cooper. And I was able to meet with him every single time before the meeting to get ideas on what the commissioner himself liked to get the board to do, because the board is an advisory board to whom? To the commission. And I think we have gotten away from that. I'm not saying we're not paying, well, no, we are. We're not paying attention to the commission. We have to look at their minutes. And I'm going to be honest with you, with the minutes is not always everything that's supposed to be on it is on there. So I want this commission to be responsible, as commissioners responsible for each of the boards. We had that in the past. I don't know why it was changed. I don't know if it was just pure laziness or whatever the reason was. But I think I would like to go back to that. That was one of the items that I wanted today to discuss.
Thank you, sir. So for now, do we have a consensus that we will address this if there's more applications for the next meeting? And then look at these boards at some point in time in the future, perhaps after my thought is wait until we have the meeting, just because it may formulate it a little bit differently.
Yes, I'd like to allow the opportunity just because of the communication issue, because what I don't want to have happen is that
can you put it closer?
We have a discussion, we notice this for the ordinance to dissolve these boards, and we have residents that are still questioning, well, I had no idea this board existed, or why didn't I know, why wasn't I provided an opportunity? So I don't want the day that we're discussing the ordinance to dissolve to have all this coming to the surface.
I just brought it up because I know that in the charter it has us look at that, and although in the charter it's not defined as to when and how we address that, and I just know since I was on the ecology board it's been sunset for a long time, and the rec center board as well. So, okay, thank you. So we'll discuss it and see if we'll put out an application to those other boards and see if there's any people who want to come. Okay, thank you. Okay, now we have the votes. Do you want to go ahead?
Okay, for the Parks and Parkway, we have Mercedes Diaz has 5 votes. Do you want to say the name of the commissioner who voted for?
It's fine.
No? So Mercedes Diaz has a Mayor
if it's 5, if it's 5, we know.
Just the number,
Yeah.
okay.
If we know we know all 5 of us voted for that
All
person.
right. Lynn Fisher, 4 votes. Daniel Keys, 1 vote. Barbara Q, 5 votes. Randall Wagoner, 4 votes. Audra McCullen, 3 votes. Public Art Advisor Board, Patrice Bertin, 4 votes. Karen Marinoni, 5 votes. Amy Raymond, 5 votes. Barbara Watts, 5 votes. Susan Wise, 5 votes. Public Safety Advisor Board, Russell Eli, 5 votes. Gavin McKenzie, 5 votes. Michael Redmond, 5 votes. Louis Rogers, 5 votes. Sandor Scher, 5 votes.
Thank you. Anything else, Commissioners? Okay.
So does that mean, the vote you just announced, does that mean
You have to have 3, okay, go ahead.
In order to take any action, you would need the majority of members, which would at this point be 3 members. So anybody who's received 3 or more votes can be deemed to be approved. If you don't have 3 votes, then you don't have enough votes to take an action.
Thank you.
And these are votes, just so I can clarify that record, the way you took your votes in this case was on paper versus doing a voice vote.
Should we go ahead and read? We can read the ballots.
You don't need to. I'm just saying
Okay.
that it's the same premise. If you took it as a voice vote versus taking it as a paper vote, you still have that same obligation for 3 votes to actually have an action taken.
Okay, thank you. So, any other comments on that? We'll move on to, go ahead.
I don't know if it was just clear to the public, I guess, who's on the board.
Okay. So, would you call out who the board members are then, please?
The board members?
Yes.
Yes.
Anybody received over 3 or more votes?
For Parks and Parkway, we have Mercedes Diaz with 5 votes. Barbara Q with 5 votes. Lynn Fisher with 4 votes. Randall Wagner with 4 votes. Audra McCollum with 3 votes. And Daniel Keys with 1 vote.
So he's not on the board because he didn't have 3, is that correct?
Yeah, or
correct.
An alternate.
It's one, we have to have 3, how does that work? Does he become an alternate or he doesn't have 3?
If you don't have 3, what I would recommend then is if you have an individual who doesn't have 3 and that board hasn't been filled or there's still another opportunity to fill a seat, you can try and take another vote to see if you can get 3 votes. But if you don't get 3 votes affirmatively, you really you don't have a proper
Enough
vote taken.
votes? Okay.
So you need to have a proper vote with enough members to actually be in the affirmative to make that action an accurate action.
So
If that makes sense.
Daniel Keys, you are the only one that has 1 vote.
If you only have 1 vote, but you still have opportunities to fill that board, you can ask for another vote to be taken to see if that individual can achieve 3 votes. If that is not the case, then it is still an open seat.
That would be for the, in this case, it would be for the, we have 5, so it'd be for the alternate.
It would have to be for the alternate because that's the only thing you have remaining. If every board is entitled, or there's an opportunity on all of these boards for alternates, not all boards have alternates.
Okay.
You have an individual who has sought that seat. They did not achieve enough votes to get on the board. You have an alternate position available. You can take another action, or you can re-advertise and have other folks try and see if they can't take that seat.
I like for us to take another vote to see if an alternate, the person that didn't get 5 votes, I think is entitled, or not entitled, deserve the respect of at least giving another vote to see if that person could be an alternate.
Okay, can we announce the rest of the boards and then we'll come back to that, if we may? Go ahead, announce the other boards.
Announce the boards?
The other boards.
So the Parks and Parkways, the Mercedes Diaz, Lynn Fisher, Barbara Q, Randall Wagner, and Audra McCollum. For Public Art, is Patrice Burton, Karen Marinoni, Amy Raymond, Barbara Watts, Susan Wise. Public Safety Advisor Board is Russell Eli, Michael Redmond, Louis Rogers, and Sandor Scher.
No, there was a motion on the floor by Commissioner Samaria. I believe it's a motion, correct? You want to make a motion to vote to approve, or to take a ballot, I guess we'd have to have a ballot for that, to see whether or not you want
The
him
person that didn't get the 5 votes, yes.
to be as an alternate. Is there a second for that motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay. Motion carries. We'll have another ballot, just to see. Do you just want to pass a piece of paper around and put yes, no on the votes?
You want another vote for the...
For the alternate, for Mr. Keys.
Okay, tonight?
Yeah. So,
I mean, if it would be easier, I think it's acceptable to take that as a voice vote.
Voice vote? Okay.
You take the same action either way, you just
Okay.
are doing it
So
differently,
we'll-
but just to avoid it being...
so we'll do a voice vote. Will you roll call, please?
Okay. Mayor Truppman?
No.
Vice Mayor Johnson Sardella? No. Commissioner Samaria?
Yes.
Commissioner Tudor?
No.
Commissioner Wise?
No.
Okay, so now we'll move to discussion of village attorney. 11A, I'm going to turn that over to the manager. That's your item for the commission.
Okay, last commission meeting, we discussed what to do with the village attorney situation. John Heron had announced that he was going to move to Fox Rothschild. In the letter received from Gray Robinson, they gave us 3 options: one to remain with Gray Robinson, one to move and transfer files to Fox Rothschild, or to move and transfer files to a different attorney and firm. And so a special meeting was held on February 12th to discuss how the commission wanted to proceed. At the meeting, the commission directed staff to ask Gray Robinson who will be lead counsel in the village moving forward from them, if in fact we keep them, and to obtain information from both Gray Robinson and Fox Rothschild. John Heron prepared and sent the information from Fox Rothschild, I believe, at the last meeting, and so that should be included in your packets, and Gray Robinson as well has done that. So tonight we're represented by Gray Robinson with Julia Mandel here, and so now it's up to the commission to decide how we'd like to proceed.
I'll open the floor for discussion.
Now, just a couple questions that I have to ask, and this is for both, 3 questions for both law firms. One is, do they have somebody that's going to be local? I think is very important, if that they're local persons. If they're not local, and if they have to come for, like this example from Tampa, are we going to be charged for their traveling? Let's see. And would the rate of what they're going to charge us, as what's in the contract, going to be stay the same, or is that going to go up? And then if they don't have somebody, do we have some? Well, the question is, do they have somebody that's going to be working with us locally, that's not going to travel from far away? And if they are, would the price is going to be the same, or if we're going to be charged? If it, as an example, if they have to come travel from Tampa, are we going to be charged for their traveling cost?
Okay, thank you. Do you want to?
Certainly, and I'm happy to answer that question, and I think it also involves some questions that some of the folks in the audience, so I'll address both at the same time. First of all, so that everybody understands, although you might make a contract with a particular lawyer in a law firm, your contract is with the law firm of Gray Robinson as it stands right now, and that hasn't changed. And Gray Robinson has a legal obligation and a moral obligation to provide you legal services until that changes. So I think that's a really important thing for folks to understand, that it's not something that you can simply kind of pick and choose. Florida bar rules don't allow that to occur in that way. And as your contract currently stands with the law firm of Gray Robinson, there is no travel time that is charged for to and from your meetings, and the hourly rate, if my memory serves, is $215.
I think $225.
$225 per hour, which is quite consistent with how local governments are charged, in my experience, all over the state. Our law firm, as you know, as you've chosen before, has a lot of expertise in local government matters. I happen to have a lot of experience and came down for this meeting. It's my intent to continue to serve you until and which there's local counsel that you find comfortable, because I think that's important that you have local counsel that you find comfortable. There is a number of lawyers within our firm down in the South Florida area that can also serve in that capacity. I think it was more of a timing question that had me serve. Until the time that occurs, it's the law firm's intent and my intent to continue to serve in this capacity to the best of my ability. And no, I cannot charge you under your current contract for travel time, nor will I for that part of it. Other than that, it really is you weighing what you think is appropriate and necessary for your village and for your purposes. And again, I go back to, until such time as you make a change, the law firm as Gray Robinson is obligated to provide you legal services and has been providing you legal services.
Just one last thing.
Oh, sure.
Sorry,
go ahead.
thank you. Without going into why, but has your law firm lost other attorneys that left recently? Meaning more attorneys have. Sorry.
Within the realm of this area of practice or other areas of practice, because there's a variety of reasons why lawyers leave law firms, and we have a lot of practice areas. There's been law firms that have lawyers that have left, lawyers that have come in. It's a lot of it has to do with your practice area and what your clientele looks like and what you're trying to accomplish. So, I mean, I don't happen to know that there's a particularly large number of lawyers that have left the firm for reasons, especially in this area of practice. So that's something, if you wanted more information, I would have to go back to my law firm and find out more information on, and we could provide you to the best of our ability that, because sometimes you can't provide that level of information, as there is confidentiality rules that could also be in place.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Wise?
I really don't have any questions. Just a comment. I mean, I'm in alignment. When you hire an attorney, you hire the firm. And in my short experience in practicing law, when Fowler White was engaged, it was Fowler White that was engaged, regardless of whether there was a partner in commercial litigation serving them in a team beneath him or her. It was about Fowler White, their legacy, their footprint, their expertise, and their relationships. I've looked at both of the submissions, and I find the footprint. I like the footprint of Gray Robinson, its depth in Florida, the work that it's done with and for Florida League of Cities, and the depth of the bench. In the Fox Rothschild presentation, there's just one lawyer presented, and it doesn't seem, they don't seem to have the depth of experience that Gray Robinson does. So I'm sharing my preference based on those metrics.
Vice Mayor?
I don't know if I have much to add from what Commissioner Wise has
You put
said.
the close him, sir, 'cause we're
And this is a new mic. From what Commissioner Wise has said, I think I stated at the last meeting that we retained Gray Robinson. I also looked at both presentations. I see that there's multiple people in Gray Robinson that are municipal or have municipal experience and can provide our service. Fox Rothschild, very, very large firm, but I liked the package of Gray Robinson when we selected them the first time. And besides our attorney moving from one firm to the other, the attorney that was presented with Gray Robinson, nothing else really has changed for me. So I think I concur with Commissioner Wise on some of the things that she pointed out.
For me, I'd like to know, if we were to stick with Gray Robinson, because that is who we have the contract with, who would be our primary point of contact? Who would be the individual who will be sitting in that chair for the commission meetings, the special commission meetings, the various issues that come up here in a tranquil little park like this? Who would be that individual? Because I see several names here.
For now, I'm going to be serving in that capacity to the best of my ability. But it is fair and accurate to say that I do reside in Tampa. I do not reside here, and so that's legitimate to raise as an issue. It is the intent of the law firm to provide local services when you've had a chance an opportunity to meet some of our more localized, but until that time, it's the intent for me to provide that service.
Okay. And then I noticed in the Fox Rothschild presentation that was provided, I'd like to actually find out who they have on their bench, their experience, their expertise, because it's not in this packet, but it's, you know, Fox Rothschild's a large firm. I have a feeling that they do have several other attorneys there that, similar to Gray Robinson, who would be available. So for me, there's just that little piece of information for me that's missing.
John Herron, Chair, would you like to ask?
That information.
And I was going to say, I think it's absolutely appropriate to have Mr. Herron come up and make whatever presentation that he feels is appropriate, as long as the commission is comfortable with that. Absolutely appropriate.
Mr. Herron, if you please come forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, staff, Ms. Mandel. Pleasure to see you. In response to your question, Commissioner Tudor, you know, we have a number of individuals in our office that have experience representing local governments, particularly here in South Florida. Myself and my partner, Steven Zelkowitz, who represents a number of municipalities and in particular CRAs in the community, including the city of North Miami Beach. He also does work for the county. I myself do work for other municipalities in addition to my previous experience here with Biscayne Park. Currently, I also provide legal services to the town of Fort Myers Beach, to the city of Delray Beach, and also to Palmetto Bay. So we have the experience and the knowledge and the ability to provide those services. As I have explained before, there would be no lag in services. There would be nothing different than what happened before. The only difference would be that instead of the village of Biscayne Park writing a check to Gray Robinson, it would write a check to Fox Rothschild. Everything else would be the same. We do have extensive experience across the country in local government representation, in addition to our experience here in Florida, that we also would be able to provide those services to the village if those were needed. I think, you know, if you were satisfied with the services that were being provided to you prior to my departure from Gray Robinson, there's going to be no change in those level of services. It will be the same. It will be the same individual. It will be me being here, local, providing those services and accessible to you all, if that's your desire. It's this commission's decision. When I first made my presentation to you all a number of months ago, I said that it would be my honor and my privilege to represent you all, and I continue to say that and continue to believe that, and believe that that with my whole heart that, you know, if you all decide to stay with Gray Robinson, that is your prerogative. I remember having said something at that meeting when the presentations were being made, and I repeat it here this evening. If you decide to stay with Gray Robinson, I will always be available to all of you for consultation, calls, communications, and whether I'm your attorney or not, because I consider each and every one of you all to be not only clients in the past, but now friends. And so to that extent, I'm available to you all at any time if you have any questions. Not that you wouldn't get excellent legal services from Ms. Mandel, who I have a lot of respect for. But in direct response to your question, it would be me, local here in Miami.
Okay, now would you be able to, because I'm not going to be making a decision because there's still some missing information. Would you be able to amend your presentation that you provided with some biographies on some of the additional staff that would be?
Sure, absolutely. The information I provided to you all was on very short notice, and I have not been asked to provide any additional information, but I certainly can provide you with the biographies and additional information to you all. You know, when the special call meeting was announced, I inquired if I believe I may have been physically somewhere else, but if you needed me, I would have been able to attend, and I'll attend any future meetings to answer any questions you may have. But certainly, if you need or require and want additional information regarding the individuals, I can provide that to you.
Yeah, if you could provide that for me, that would be extremely helpful, because for me, this initial process, we had both sole practitioners and firms come in vying to be our municipal attorney. For me, I find the deep bench for a firm to be very important and be very beneficial. So if I could just get that information from you regarding, what we have there at Fox Rothschild, then it makes it a little bit easier for me to really compare the firms, looking at the background for the different attorneys there, and then for me to make that determination. Because for me personally, this isn't an emergency where we have to make a decision right now. Our attorney is Gray Robinson. For me, it's just a decision of, depending on what personnel is here, do we maintain that relationship with Gray Robinson, or do we look elsewhere?
If I may, with your indulgence, explain a little bit the process that takes place in a situation like this. As Ms. Mandel indicated, we're all bound by the rules of professional conduct that are put forth by the Florida Bar. Up until the moment that I tendered my resignation at Gray Robinson, under the rules, I was prohibited from having contact with each and every one of you regarding that issue, and saying, hey, come with me. So the moment that I tendered my resignation, the joint letter, in accordance with the bar rules, was generated and sent out under the letterhead of Gray Robinson, because that's how the rules say it's supposed to be done. And as indicated by your manager, you had three choices. You could move with me, you could stay with Gray Robinson, or you could pick door number 3, as I like to refer to it. And what I asked was to make sure that my concern was that there would potentially be a gap in service, because there wasn't anyone in South Florida, at least to my best knowledge, that works in government as I had at Gray Robinson. And so I didn't want you all to be without proper representation, and I cannot talk to you all and get your approval to sign that letter and move over to Fox Rothschild until it's at a meeting such as this. And so you already had your meeting for, I believe, the month of February, and we would have to wait until March. So that was the lag time. If Ms. Mandel understands the rules differently than me, I'm sure
and that's absolutely accurate. He would not have had the opportunity to have that communication prior to his resignation. The process that we're going through is the appropriate process, and as I've stated, Gray Robinson has the obligation, as we stand right now, to continue to provide you service, and we're providing you service as you go through this process. However you want to have that process, whether or not you want to take more time, you want to take less time, the law firm of Gray Robinson will continue to provide you legal services as long as you need them, but you need to evaluate what's the best for your jurisdiction, and I think that's what your process is now, and you continue in that process.
Conversely, I would say that we're set up at Fox Rothschild to have that seamless transition if that's your decision.
Okay.
So,
Commissioner Wise?
This isn't a question for you. This is actually just a point of conversation for my fellow commissioners. But this is the second time that I've heard Attorney Herron suggest something that I think runs afoul of attorney-client privilege, suggesting conversations. We can't, if we deal with Gray Robinson, to call you and speak to you outside the confines of the attorney-client privilege would be foolhardy. He's invited conversations with residents that violate the privilege that this commission holds with its attorney. That upsets me. What also upsets me is both of these firms have had the same amount of time to present a package. Gray Robinson has not only given us the bios, CVs, and experience of their entire bench, but they do have Rebecca Rodriguez here, who is local counsel, very experienced, and I don't see them showing up. So I feel strongly that Gray Robinson is the way to go, and I just thought I should share that.
Do you
with
have a motion?
I make a motion that we retain Gray Robinson going forward.
Is there a second?
I don't.
I'll second the motion. I'll be there in a second. Okay. There's a motion on the floor. Now there's a vote.
But what I want to state is we have a commissioner that made a statement, and I don't know if we've discussed it, all of us, before we go ahead and make a motion and a
I
vote.
agree, Madam Mayor. I think everyone should have an opportunity to react to what I just said. I mean, I think I dropped a little bit of a bomb in the middle of the room, but that has made me uncomfortable for a while, and I think we should all have an opportunity to react to it.
You can't start a fire and not allow us to ask a question.
Of course.
Try to put it out.
No, I
So-
didn't suggest that a motion be
So
made.
now with that statement made by my fellow commissioner, it would be, in my personal opinion, foolhardy to take a vote now. We have representation. There is no emergency. It's not, if we wait and get some more information, do a little more research, and take a vote in March, we're not going to be without representation from now to the March meeting. We're covered. We're March. Or April, sorry. Yeah. It's old age. It's old age. So we have that coverage. So I think it would be a mistake to take a vote on this right now. I have stated that I would like to see additional information from Fox Rothschild. Also, with this statement that was made right before the motion, I personally will not feel comfortable making a vote either way. I want to go ahead and look into this matter a little bit more because it is a serious matter to me. So that's just my commission 2 cents.
Well, then I'm going to add why I'm uncomfortable and why I seconded the motion. First of all, we did hire Gray Robinson, and the argument was it was a deep bench, and all the commissioners, except for me, felt that was incredibly important. From last meeting to the 12th to now, I've suddenly understood why it's important, which we'll talk about a little bit later with FEMA and other issues. So, having said that, I did read through both sections, and both individuals were given the same amount of time to put it together. My concern happened the meeting where he said any resident can call me. And that was a big problem for me. And I discussed it with Mr. Herron. I discussed it that night of Tuesday, and then on Friday, he informed me that he took a call from one of the residents and proceeded to tell me why that was great. I have a problem when you're communicating with the residents when you're representing the commission. And that is one of my concerns. The other thing that happened that was disturbing to me was when one of our residents stood up and said that who told him not to come to the meeting. The only two people that had that conversation, Mr. Herron, was you and I. When you asked me if I thought you should come, and I said, if you're asking my opinion, I don't think for this meeting that would be necessary because we're just deciding where to proceed, and they weren't presenting. That information apparently got back to one of our residents who stood up in the meeting and made a great statement about it. That bothered me because it made me think at that point that there was some sort of cross-communication.
No, my conversation, in addition to my recollection is I called you just prior to the meeting.
Sunday. The Sunday.
Yes, yes, I did on Sunday. I also spoke with the manager, and I spoke with the manager on Monday, and was told by both of you that my attendance would not be necessary because no decision was being made. I didn't have any conversations with anyone else. I did actually speak to not only to the two of you, but I called all the other members of the commission and had a very similar conversation with each one of them as well about
whether or not I needed to attend or not. And my recollection was that some had differing opinions, but the consensus was that my attendance wasn't necessary. But I did speak with all 5 of the commission members on Sunday and Monday prior to the meeting to ask that question.
Commissioner Samaria.
Now, I need to correct you. I didn't get, you might have missed me, but I didn't get a call.
Yeah,
I didn't get a call from you. I got a call later on. I want to just correct that.
That is correct. Commissioner Samaria is correct. There was an issue with his the phone number that I had for him, and it went straight to his voicemail. I apologize, Commissioner Samaria. Thank you for the corrections.
Commissioner Weiss.
Yeah, if I could ask a question, you suggested that even if we don't retain you, that because you now consider us friends, we could continue a collegial relationship. Do you have a collegial relationship with any of the former commissioners who sat on this dais? Do you have a collegial relationship with Rox Ross?
I've known Ms. Ross from prior to my tenure here. She and I, she was a subordinate of mine. We worked at the same law firm for approximately 8 years. I don't have I mean, to the extent that I have that relationship with her, yes, I mean, it predates that. But a collegial relationship with other past council members, I would say...
Have you spoken with
yes.
her in the last 6 months?
In the last 6 months, I can't say with I don't. If it coincides with the fact that that's when she was off the bench, I did receive and I have spoken to, as indicated by the mayor, with her husband.
Okay. Well, I'll just say that I think it's clear from the public comments earlier today that we are at this moment in an adversarial relationship with Ms. Ross, and I think because of your relationship with her, your representing us might be a conflict of interest. It's just a suggestion.
Excuse me. That's enough. That's enough. Mr. Redmond as well. That's enough. That's enough. Thank you. Mr. Redmond, Mr. Kennedy.
We need to know that you represent us.
I cannot, just a moment, please.
No worries.
We're going to have a conversation, and everybody's going to be able to speak on this dais. Thank you. Commissioner Weiss.
In answer to the question, in response,
excuse me,
Commissioner Weiss, in response to your question, my ethical and professional responsibility is and will always be to represent my client, and that is the Village Council Commission. There's nothing that I can do or feel or believe that would dictate otherwise, because to do so would be a violation of my ethical obligation to my client, and I would never breach that ethical obligation. If you ask anyone who has known me long enough, they will respond that I value more than anything else is my professional reputation and my representation of my clients to the best of my ability. And that's what I will always do, first and foremost, every time. Now, do I have collegial relationships with ex-council members? Yes, I do. Well beyond these chambers and other communities where I have served as the town attorney, the city attorney, the village attorney. I'm friends with those council members and ex-council members because that individual or those individuals have maintained that friendship. But that friendship would never interfere with my ethical obligation and my ethical dictates and what I would actually do for the benefit of my clients.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
If I may, I have a question for Rebecca Rodriguez, if I may. Could you come up for me, please? I've had the pleasure of working with Attorney Mandel on several items, but I have not had the pleasure of meeting you or speaking to you, and I know the intent was to have you be our local counsel. If that was the desire of the village, I know that was one of the conversations, but if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your...
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rebecca Rodriguez. I am an attorney at Gray Robinson. I have been admitted since 2013. My practice includes litigation and appellate issues on behalf of entities, banks, hospitals, municipalities. My focus is litigation and appeals. I had the pleasure of working with John during his time at Great Robinson for the Village of Palmetto Bay, City of Doral, City of Marathon, and I also serve as special counsel to the City of Coral Gables on utility issues under Gary Resnick, who's a shareholder here in South Florida. And for those of you who aren't familiar with him, he was the longest standing mayor for the City of Wilton Manors, and now he serves on the commission. I also work with Anastasia Protopapadakis, who is a shareholder in our Miami office. The first 5 years of her practice, she was counsel for the Florida League of Cities, and that's all she did. She now serves the Broward County Public School Board, which is in the middle of a very big case because of the Parkland shooting, which was tragic. And that's gone all the way up to the Supreme Court on the issue of sovereign immunity caps, which is extremely relevant to everyone. And we can talk about that at a later date. But we have several attorneys in our South Florida office who, the words deep bench keep getting used. We have board certified labor and employment attorneys in South Florida, which is very important to municipal needs. I'm sure you've had the uncomfortable issues with employment issues with your village employees. That we handle that. Our firm is a soup to nuts firm, and that's not going to change. And I've heard some reference to some FEMA issues, and I'd like to point out that Great Robinson is now also located in Washington, D.C. We have a lobbying team there, an established lobbying team there, formerly of Eris Group. We have a power lobbying practice in Tallahassee, which is headed by Dean Cannon, the former Florida Speaker of the House. We also have Dennis Ross, former federal congressman, who serves on the West Coast. We are a soup to nuts firm, and there's John is fantastic, and I will never speak ill of John, ever. I have a warm place in my heart for John. I really do. With respect, I'm here because I'm here for Great Robinson, and Great Robinson has a board-certified attorney for whatever the city's going to need. Employment issues, maritime, if that should come up, aviation, should that come up, family law, tax law, federal administrative, local administrative. We have experts in everything. So you're not just getting myself or Ms. Mandel or Ms. Protopapadakis, who couldn't be here today. You're getting close to 300 lawyers across the state of Florida and including Washington, D.C.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
I don't have anything for
No.
Ms. Rodriguez. Thank you.
No. Okay. Thank you. So the discussion is Commissioner Tudor would like to wait to our next meeting. Is that correct, sir?
Well, yeah, I would like to wait till next meeting, especially given some of the, what's the best word, inflammatory allegations that have come forward in this tranquil little village. So, yeah, I need some time to look into those matters because the matters are serious in nature. They discuss possible ethics violations, given the fact that in my real world job, ethics is a big issue, and for somebody to throw something out there like that, I would expect a body to stop, take a deep breath, and look into the allegation and not just pass judgment based on allegation alone. So there's some more work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
We still have, and when I'll say again, we still have legal coverage. We have an attorney for the Village of Biscayne Park.
Commissioner Smith.
I agree with Commissioner Tudor. I definitely cannot vote on this tonight, especially the allegations that have been made tonight. I'd like for our village manager to look into that. And, I just don't believe that a person would violate their ethics as an attorney. That would have to be pretty stupid to do that. So, but that's serious allegations, and I respect Commissioner Watts for making a statement, but I definitely, whatever decision I was going to keep, I can't make that decision until we have more. I want more information in reference to this, and I want the law firm Foxtrot to give more information.
So would you all like presentations next meeting from these two? One of the discussions was whether or not we're going to stay with Gray Robinson, well, regardless of which, whether or not we could go with one of these two firms or open it up to all three. I have no problem with keeping it between these two. I just want to make sure that's what we do, so if we're going to have presentations, we have them all at once.
I mean, for me personally, well, one question or one thing that we'll have to look at, I know there has been a Daily Business Review article that came out that there has been some personnel moves at Gray Robinson. So, you know, I want to have those conversations, look into that a little bit further as well. But, you know, I think the wise thing to do would be to table this to the next commission meeting.
Do you want it for the next commission meeting since it's in 3 weeks, or do you want to have it in the following?
Have a discussion at that time.
Do you want I'm sorry, did you want it on the next commission meeting or the following? Because it's only a couple weeks away. That's what I'm asking you.
The next commission meeting would be fine for me. I think that's more than enough time. But on a side note real quick, I personally want to apologize to Mrs. Ross. I think that I've always been very passionate about people operating with a level of civil discourse, and I think that what went on previously a few minutes ago was not, I think, the best reflection on this commission. So I personally would like to apologize.
I second that.
And if I may, Commissioner Tudor, I don't need you to apologize for me. I said nothing about.
Commissioner Wise, please do not direct your conversation to me.
I'd like to.
I'm apologizing to a resident. That is apology for me. I'm not apologizing for you.
Okay.
You can make whatever statements you want.
Okay.
You can say whatever you want to residents.
So then I'll let Ms. Ross know that I said nothing about you. All I suggested was that if there was a personal relationship between yourself and Mr. Herron, I'm not going to drop it. Please.
Excuse me. Could you just allow the commissioner to speak?
Because these are issues of fact, and I know that you're all stirred up like there's something personal. But if there's anyone who seems personally invested in us retaining Mr. Herron, it's clearly you, because you've been lobbying for him via emails to all of us, and that's really odd to me. If there is a personal relationship, then there is a conflict of interest. It has nothing to do with you. It doesn't disparage you. It's just a matter of fact. So that is the one issue that I have, that if there is a relationship between our attorney and someone who is subjecting us to records requests because they are trying to dig up something, who knows what, then that creates a conflict of interest.
I think we're getting off target here. This conversation is about the attorney.
Excuse me. I'm going to ask a couple of things, because this is obviously a heated conversation.
That's the only way.
I'm going to ask the audience to please simmer down. I'm going to ask my commissioners, fellow commissioners as well. My thought is this, so we can make a decision and move forward. I also think it's fair to either Mr. Herron or Gray Robinson, so they know what's going on as well. And we have a lot of business to do. That if we all agree, why don't we have presentations next meeting and vote on the firms we're going to decide to retain? Does that sound like a reasonable thing to do?
I like to have it May, not March, because we only got 2 weeks for the next commission meeting. So I think it should be moved to the May meeting. I'll make a motion that. I'm sorry.
Before you do it, Vice Mayor.
I would like to just make the comment that I hope things like this don't keep persisting. This conversation turned into a trial. Now, there could be facts that came out of this, and all facts that the commission should consider. We only have our monthly meetings to all talk with each other, so that's fine. But the explosive nature of how everything is handled, it really doesn't help our discussions. So I would just ask that the outburst or this turning into an inquisition, I don't think was necessary to get some of the facts out. But moving back to Commissioner Samaria's point, I agree with Commissioner Tudor as well that we got a certain presentation from Gray Robinson that had all of the attorneys that have a municipal background or were going to be provided to us for that service, but we didn't get it from Fox Rothschild. we need to compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges. So I think I need to hear from Mr. Herron, staff maybe, to get everything together for us to make a decision and review all this. Is it necessary to push this to the May meeting? Because like Ms. Commissioner Tudor has stated, we have an attorney, we don't need to rush, but I don't want to get to the April meeting and there's still things missing from the packet, or people that should be here for us to ask questions are not able to attend. So I don't want us to rush on it needs to be the April meeting. I want to make sure that the next time we have a meeting, all the information is here for us to make a decision.
So is there a consensus among the commission that we can move this to the May meeting?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
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 Okay, presentations by both firms in the May meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're into new business. The first business before us is a variance, so I'm going to turn it over to the attorney. This is variance PV 18-0003 at 11390 Northeast 8th Avenue. Legalization of a shed and pergola in the backyard. Do you want to go ahead and do this, swearing?
Yes. This is a public hearing, a quasi-judicial public hearing on a variance request. Your code provides the standards upon which a variance is determined. This has gone, from what I understand, to your Planning and Zoning Board for recommendation. And you have before you all of the documents in your record which you would be using as part of your consideration in a quasi-judicial matter. As I'm sure you're aware, in quasi-judicial matters, you're expected to sit in a quasi, like a judge, making findings of fact and making a determination as to whether or not your code has been met. The variance standards are within your packet, and I won't read them unless you would like me to read them, but as a general matter, what you're looking for, looking at the standards, and this is in 13.4.2, in determining whether or not the variance is appropriate, is I'll boil it down to, it's generally a hardship determination, given the property which is at issue. So at this point in time, I think it's appropriate for staff to give a presentation, and then to hear from the petitioner and any members of the audience that would like to speak either for or against. The one thing I will remind everybody that this is fact-based, it's not opinion-based. You are to give whatever factual basis you have for your information that you're putting in the record.
Do you swear everybody in who wants to testify?
Yes. Let's go ahead and do that. If everybody would like to speak, please stand. To be sworn.
And even though all of you, yes, you all have to stand.
If you're the petitioner or you want to speak
neighbor,
for or
petitioner,
against
anybody.
this, you need to stand to be sworn. If you can raise your right hand, I swear or affirm that the testimony I'm about to give is true and correct to the best of your ability. Thank you.
Okay, I have a point of question that came up when I went through with the attorney on this matter, and I just would like clarification from, I'm sorry, with the manager. I'd like clarification on this. Regarding the pergola, there was an issue whether or not that was considered a ancillary structure or accessory structure. And in our code, there's no discussion of a pergola per se. If it's not in our code, can we defer to Miami-Dade code? Because they do have pergola spelled out and what the requirements are with that.
And that is what we do in those instances. Miami-Dade code does give details on what to do with pergola and setbacks, so forth. And this pergola does tend to meet their requirements.
So because it's, and I passed out to everybody in the beginning the Miami-Dade code. I tried to pare it down for everybody so they wouldn't have to read everything. I took that straight out of Miami-Dade County, 2 different sections. The first section defines what a pergola is. A freestanding structure usually consisting of parallel colonnades supporting an open roof of girders and cross rafters at 78.3. And then the next section was what the requirements are. And if it was under 100 square feet, and when I asked the manager, he said it was a 9 by 11. Is that correct, manager?
That is what the permit says.
So that would be that would be 99 feet. So therefore the setback on it would be either be 5 or 2 feet. And so that would come down to whether or not the neighbor, according to the Miami-Dade code, unless that the neighbor themselves would have to be okay with it, and then it could be 2 feet, and if not, it would have to be 5 feet. That is my understanding of this code, without being an expert, but I'll turn it over to the attorney. I just want to make sure that I don't want you to have to give testimony on something you may not have to.
Right, we have letters from, signed by our 3 closest neighbors. I don't know if that was provided to you.
I think before you go into that level of testimony from the property owners, I would go ahead and allow the city manager to make those whatever comments, and then you'll need to state your name for the record.
Okay.
To begin with, on the pergola, it does meet the Miami-Dade requirements. I understand that the homeowners at this residence have asked and received information from their neighbors, and we have written letters from them, I believe.
Yes.
And those will be presented tonight as well. So the pergola really is less of an issue. The setbacks on the shed is definitely within the setbacks. Whether there's a hardship there or not is up to the commission to determine. P&Z didn't seem to think so. And looking at the survey, you have all seen the photos and the surveys and so forth. There's one picture that shows a large green area with a cute little dog there. And the reality is there's also an easement through that green area. That's either a water line or a gas line. We weren't able to determine which. So the homeowners would be unable to put in a concrete base there for their shed. And also their lot, if you notice, the lot next door is an L-shaped lot that goes the length of their lot and then behind it. So their lot is only about, I think it's 5,500 square feet, roughly. It's a very small lot. Their house, takes up most of it. So there really isn't any place else for them to have a shed if they're going to have a shed other than where it's located. So.
Any more questions for the manager? Okay. State your name, address.
It's Marie Manuel Tiard, and it's 11390 Northeast 8th Avenue.
Can you speak on the microphone?
Can you speak a little louder and into the mic? Thank you.
Yes, it's Marie Manuel Tiard, and it's 11390 Northeast 8th Avenue.
Thank you.
Do you guys want to go ahead and present your information?
Yeah, like the manager just said, we don't really have any other place to put it. That's kind of the only option we had to put that. And that's also the place that is really not visible. If you guys have seen the pictures or if you have looked at it, the pergola is not visible at all, not even a little bit. And the shed is barely visible. And if you guys want us to do something to hide it, we can put like planters or something like that. That wouldn't be any problem for us.
I also wanted to state that we did get letters from 3 of our closest neighbors, and they do not mind the pergola or the shed. We have, signed letters from them if you wanted us to present that to you.
Yes.
We'll need to make the part of the record.
Yes.
We also have pictures of the pergola and the shed showing how it is, how you can see them from the street. Well, the pergola is not at all visible, but the shed is slightly.
Thank you. Yes, most of the pictures already.
May I ask a question on the air conditioning?
Yes.
The air conditioning sticks out about how far is it?
I'm not sure about measurements.
Approximately? About
It's a big
maybe.
It's a 5-ton, so it's this wide and it's this from the wall. So I would say
5 feet-ish?
Oh,
4
about
feet,
this.
5 feet? Yeah, about
So,
5 feet. Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, did you guys put in the shed yourselves after you moved there, or was it existing?
Yeah. No, we put it in
Okay.
after we moved there.
That's what I thought, because there was the code, the code notice on this. So,
I'll go ahead and make a comment on that. A lot of times these types of variances come up through a code enforcement issue. The fact that there is a code enforcement issue really should not be a determining factor on whether or not they meet the criteria for a variance. It is a fact in the case, but because the property is in the configuration it's in, and because of the evidence they're presenting, you need to make a determination as to whether or not they meet those criteria for a hardship, and they either meet it or they don't. The fact that it came from a code enforcement violation in and of itself is not determinative of whether or not they meet the hardship criteria.
Question. Yeah. I mean, this might be exaggerated and make it big and out of, but if I build a house and I didn't do it with a permit and I violated it and they fined me, which they were fined in this case, does that mean that I have to take down my house, or am I allowed to leave it up as long as I come in front of the commission and say, okay, I made a mistake, I shouldn't have built the house, I shouldn't put the shed in, I'll pay the fine, and then can I keep it? I mean, that's the same thing that's here.
I'll go ahead and respond to that. There's two processes in place. One is whether or not you violated the code. There's a process for that, and if there's fines available to them that they need to pay, anybody, not this particular individual, but as a general matter, if that's the violation, the penalty that you pay. If you build a house without a permit and you have to go back and get it re-permitted, then you oftentimes will have to pay triple permit fees, and there may be other violations. The second question is whether or not you can meet your land development code provisions, and if you can't, because you've built this house, for that example, it's in the setbacks, before you're in a position under which you have to be responsible for removing the structure from a land development code perspective, you get to come and, from a due process perspective, find out whether or not you can meet the hardship criteria. That's why my initial statement is it's not determinative. Just because you did something without a permit, you've got a penalty there. That doesn't mean that you still can't meet the hardship criteria. So what's in front of you today isn't the code enforcement violation, but it's actually the question of whether or not they meet the variance standards, and that is based entirely on this record, and certainly within your purview to make a determination that they do not. It is also within your purview to make a determination that they do.
Help me out if I'm wrong here, there's basically 4 criteria they have to meet. Let me see if I can get them up, hold on.
It's in here, and I will...
There are...
I thought I saw the hardship criteria.
There are special, I don't have the code in front of me, but there's special circumstances or conditions affecting the property.
I'll go ahead and read them if you would like me to. It's 13.4.2, grounds for variance, findings required. The planning board may recommend a variance from this chapter when in its opinion, and this is what's in your code. I'm presuming that this follows through into your determination. It's the general hardship criteria. So, may result in strict compliance. Recommending any variance to the board shall prescribe only conditions it deems necessary to or desirable for the public interest. In making its findings, as required below, the board shall take into account the nature of the proposed land, the existing character of the land, and buildings in the vicinity. No variance shall be recommended until the board finds, 1, that there are special circumstances or conditions affecting the property which are such that the strict application of the provisions of this chapter, which I'm presuming is your land development code, would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of his or her land. 2, the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right of the petitioner. 3, the granting of the variance will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to other properties in the territory in which the property is situated. And 4, that the variance proposed is a minimum variance which makes possible the reasonable use of the property. It goes on to talk about imposition of positions. This is very standard language for any variance you'll see, and so that's what you're looking at in making your determination.
I have a question regarding because we defaulted to Miami-Dade County for their code on the pergola, is the pergola still have to be part of this variance because it meets the requirements because they have neighbors that have agreed to it, or is that part of the variance?
I cannot answer that question as I sit here right now. What's in front of you is a request for variance on both of the structures.
Okay.
So there may be a determination that we can make after I review it or we discuss it further that says, well, it was great that they asked for that variance, they really don't need it. And I will say, if you deny them the pergola today in this variance, and it's ultimately determined that they could do it as a matter of right by defaulting to the Miami-Dade County code, then they have the right to have it. So that wouldn't take away that right. But I just don't have enough information in front of me. I have to go look at a couple of things before I can say definitively that that's not a requirement of your code to have a variance for that particular provision.
Thank you. Having said that, here's what I was looking at now, and I'm sorry if anybody else wants to speak, please jump in. I was looking at their AC. If their AC is about 5 feet, that gives them 10 feet to have the shed. The shed lengthwise is 8 feet from the doors back, or 10 feet. It's 8. It's 10 foot. It's a wide, so it's 10 foot wide by 8 feet from the doors, right? So that if I'm doing my math correctly here, that gives them 2 feet to be able to pull out something out of their shed. So if you have a mower or anything, you wouldn't even be able to get it out if you put it across in the middle area where it'd be allowed. We don't have any space in the back. Right, it's 15 feet. So even if we wanted them to relocate it in the back, which is what is required, there's no place to put it because they can't put it on the, if I'm doing this right, northwest corner. They can't put it in the center because of the AC. The only place they could put it is where it says a concrete slab there, which you already have stuff there. But if they put it there, then they'd be blocking the pergola with a shed.
Correct, yes.
So I kept trying to find a place to move the shed, and I couldn't find one.
Yeah, we have very
unless
limited
you
space.
reattach it to the back of the building, which is what the code requires.
And dovetailing off of that, since our attorney can't answer the question as to the pergola, it's my understanding that we have to make a decision as well on the pergola, so those same questions, I'm assuming, need to be asked with regard to the pergola. Was the pergola able to be put somewhere else? Because we're going to have to address the same 4 prongs dealing with the pergola as well, since that hasn't been removed from the request for the variance. Because otherwise, how are we?
I think that's an accurate reflection of what I've said, which is right now what's in front of you is a variance for 2 different structures on this property. One is a shed and the other is a pergola. I think I think it's persuasive that the city of, Miami-Dade County does have that regulation. There is no regulation here. I just can't say, as I sit here definitively, that they no longer need that variance. So you do, as it sits in front of you today, need to analyze both those issues. And in fact, they may not need it. Whether or not they need it or they don't need it really isn't part of your determination. It's really whether or not they meet that criteria, and you can either find it in the record before you or you don't.
There is something I wanted to add, is that also we had an inspector coming to inspect the shed, and he approved it. It was approved by an inspector of Biscayne Park Village.
But not the zoning portion. No, that's for the building portion, not for the zoning portion, correct? Because that's why you went it from P&Z. It's the zoning portion that determines the location. The building person determines whether or not it's appropriate for that spot.
Madam Mayor, excuse me. Do you have what the 4 variance requirements that the board has? Because according to the paperwork, it says all 4 variance requirements not met. Can you tell me what those 4 are? Because it doesn't say here.
Unfortunately, the chair of the board is not here. We do have one member of the board, I believe, present. Did you stand to testify, sir?
Who?
Mr. Kennedy?
Oh, he's not on the board.
He's not on the board.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking of Dan. I'm so sorry.
To answer your question, though, they are the same criteria. The criteria that I read,
So they said all 4.
they made a determination, your planning and zoning board made a determination to recommend, because they're a recommending body, that those criteria are not met. The decision is ultimately with this board to make that determination.
I don't see where they could put the shed unless they put it right up against the wall and turned it around, and even then they wouldn't have enough footage. So there really is no location to put the shed. So I have no problem with that because there really is nowhere to put it. They can't put it on the northwest corner. They can't put it in the middle because of the air conditioning. The only place they could put it is in the concrete slab, which means now the pergola is going to be staring at a shed right in front of the concrete slab. And then so the only other location is here. The neighbors don't seem to mind, so I would argue that they've met the requirement because of the peculiarity of the lot for 1 and 2. And since number 3, the residents nearby don't seem to be bothered by any of this, then the question is about the 4th one, which is the minimum variance. That to me is where the sticking point is. I don't see a problem with the shed because of the incredibly small area that you have. I would have no objection to granting a variance for the shed, assuming we didn't need to grant a variance for the pergola, but that's still up for grabs. They could, you're right, they could take off the pergola, move it all the way in the middle of their yard, take the shed and put it back where the pergola is, okay? But it still would not meet the minimum 10-foot setback. So no matter what they do, they can't meet the 10-foot side setback for any of these, because they don't have the land. I think they meet the hardship requirement.
If you're going to allow them to have the shed where it is, then they need to put a fence in front of the shed, because that cannot be seen from the street, because the shed is supposed to be in your backyard.
So let me ask a question to be fair to the Planning and Zoning Board. Could we also not then make the shed go with instead of having it go with the property, but go with the property owner, so when they leave, the shed would have to come down, or no?
You can't do that on a variance. It specifically runs with the land.
Okay. I'll let my other... Is there anybody else here to testify as well? Before we... You want to testify? Did you swear in?
Yes, you did.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jared Susi, 1030 Northeast 120th Street. I served on the Planning and Zoning Board as an alternate, and a couple instances we did have some variants come in front of us. Some were denied, similar to this one. But I was taking a look through the variance paperwork, and this property, it's a smaller property, yes. Has about 5,300 square feet, if I read that correctly. But all the properties within the village, the zoning code, our zoning code, and the Planning and Zoning Board, it was trying to keep the properties to not overdevelop, to hold it at a 50% line. This property, if you look at the survey, it has concrete from property line to the house, which is 2 stories, and then that's on the south side. Lots of concrete walkways, brick walkways, and then the house itself, which is about 2,300 square feet according to the property appraiser. So right then and there, you're well over the 50% mark. But by allowing the concrete slabs to be in place, you're allowing people to develop more square footage on each property. So in my opinion, they bought this house. They knew what this house was when they bought it. The codes haven't changed. And in my opinion, I don't think that they should be granted a variance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Susi?
Sorry, one other thing. By putting a pergola right against the property line, you are affecting the neighboring property. There are fire codes, and the construction of properties next door to flammable materials need to then have a Class A fire rating. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Could you come back up? I have a question for you, if you don't mind. Thank you. The concrete slabs were there before you?
Yes.
Okay.
When we bought the property.
So they've been here?
Correct. For well over, we bought the property like 7 years ago.
When we bought the house, we didn't know anything about code, about those 50%. We just bought the house. We didn't know it was like that. I think it's been like that for decades.
Vice Mayor?
I still want to hear a little bit more about the pergola, because right now we don't have enough information to go through those 4 points for that. So it's you know, I'm looking at the survey here, and I'm just trying to determine where else the pergola could have been placed.
This is what I was doing, is I was playing the 9. So if it's 9 foot wide and you turn it on its side and you put it in the middle of the backyard, which you could do without having a concrete slab, then it would only give, they'd be right in front of the air conditioning.
For the pergola.
For the pergola. So the only place the pergola I could see could have gone, even if they remove it and move it, would have to go sideways in the middle of the yard, and then you're still talking 5 foot from there. You basically have a foot between that and the air conditioning. I just don't see where it could have been moved. I'm not saying it couldn't be there, I'm just saying the AC would be their view. And then the shed would have, but even if you do that, then where do you put the shed? Because then the shed would have to go, it has to have a 10-foot setback, so it would have to go basically across this area here. Or it could be attached to the side.
Two separate issues. I just want to address each separately, that the shed is going to be separate from the pergola. Because let's say, hypothetically, if the pergola could have fit somewhere else but the shed not, hypothetically we would be granting a variance for the shed,
not the pergola.
And not the pergola. So I'm trying to avoid us talking about all of this together as one group, as if the pergola and the shed are moving around as a unit. Because I don't think that that's how we'll address these points validly.
Since we've already advertised, that's my only concern. We would have to re-advertise. I'm sorry.
Excuse me. I apologize. I just wanted to get some clarification from the village manager on how these two regulations are treated together, and wanted to make sure that we're consistent on how we treat when you don't have something in your code directly related to a property right and defaulting then to the Miami-Dade County Code. And what I read this to say is there's two separate, the Miami-Dade Code, there's two separate types of structures where they allow the setbacks, either a 5 or a 2 foot on the rear and the side, depending on whether or not you have letters. It does utilize the term affidavit, but a letter as it relates to being a consent of the owner. In discussing this, I understand that they would meet that criteria. They might have to go back and get an actual affidavit, not a letter. A letter is not sufficient. Okay. So probably what I would recommend is on the pergola issue to continue that particular variance request, so they don't have the rules of right, have them go back and actually get signed affidavits. You will need them signed and you will need them notarized, indicating that they don't have a problem, because we at the very minimum need to be, a letter is not an affidavit, and then that would allow us to determine whether or not that variance should be dismissed, meaning there was no obligation on their part to receive or to make that request. So that way you're not having to kind of face up with which jurisdiction meets which. We can go ahead and get that resolved. If they can't get an affidavit, it's not resolved. I'm presuming that you can, but if you can't get that affidavit, that'll be resolved. And they would be in line with the Miami-Dade County Code. But they can either ask for the entire thing to be continued, or you can go ahead and take an action on the shed issue. Now, because you have a conflict between the shed requirements in your code and the Miami-Dade County Code, then your ordinance on it, the sheds, would be the ordinance that's implemented.
Does the commission want to take action on the shed tonight? And then...
Well, I guess the clarity is going to be for the cost and the re-advertising. If we take care of the shed tonight, and that's one piece that's done, and I guess let me back up and ask a question. If the pergola issue can be resolved, let's say, outside, and we confirm that it's all squared away because it meets the county code, then it's still going to be another variance that needs to come in front of us, or no? If not, then I would say
no. What will happen, and that's why I would prefer to continue that item to a date certain, so that they can, your notice would stay with what happens tonight, continue to the next night. So they wouldn't have to renotice just in case they can't meet that criteria, and they can come back on that issue. If it is determined that they meet the Miami-Dade County Code and that they never needed to ask for the variance to begin with, they can simply withdraw that variance and that issue goes away.
Okay. I just don't want to create extra costs.
Right. No, and that's reasonable.
So do we have to make a motion for the continuance on the... You
would need a motion on the continuance.
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Well, actually, I'm sorry, can I stop you? I'd like to find out if you as the petitioner object to the commission continuing the variance as it relates to the pergola to whatever date you deem appropriate, whether or not it's the next meeting or the one in May, to give you this opportunity to meet the Miami-Dade County Code, because it's your petition and you have a right to be heard on your petition.
No, we don't mind. And would the affidavit be sufficient to allow us to have the pergola, or?
If you meet the what I'm saying is if you can meet the Miami-Dade County Code, which allows you to have your rear setback reduced to 2 feet upon an affidavit submitted indicating consent from the owner of the property that directly abuts the property boundary where the reduction is requested. So wherever you're requesting that up to that 2 feet, you need to get those property owners, they've given you letters, but they actually need to submit them as affidavits. Sure. And if we determine, once we've got that information, that you now meet the Miami-Dade County Code, then you can withdraw your application. But we need to continue it so that you can continue to work through that process.
Okay, that's fine.
And can we also move forward with the shed?
It's my opinion to move forward with the shed because they're 2 separate variance requests in one application.
Okay, so on the shed issue, what is my fellow commissioners' thoughts on that?
I believe the requirements of hardship have been met.
Commissioner Samaria?
I don't. I think that the board said 4 of the criteria when I met. Was the shed part of the 4?
Yes.
I got it right.
May I ask a question? Is the reason, because none of us were at the meeting, so I don't know, but I did speak to JP this morning, the building clerk, and he said the reason that there was insufficient information is what part of the reason for the determination. Would you know?
I was not at the meeting, and he actually did not relay that information to me, so I didn't.
Okay, I don't want to testify. That's my understanding, but I'd rather have it hear it from the board and not a second hand, directly from the chair. So. And
I don't have the minutes of the board right in front of me right now.
Okay.
So, I mean.
I've just looked over this, and I can't find another place to put it, unless it's in the middle of the yard, and then they have no yard. I don't think it's hurting anything. I think as long as they put something to block it from the street, whether it's a fence, since there's concrete there, I don't think you can grow anything.
No, actually, we're planning on putting planters with closures so that we can hide the shed from the street, from street view.
I don't have a problem with that.
You may want to consider that if that's the intent of the board, that's a reasonable condition that they screen through either planters or vegetation or other kind of screening mechanisms the shed so that it is not visible from the street. And I think it would be appropriate to make that as a condition of granting that variance if the board was so inclined to do so.
No, question. I just want to get some clarification about why. I mean, we're talking about the northwest corner of the property. Mm-hmm. There's utility
right here
that's running through.
Do you see where it says 15?
There's
So I'm just trying to figure out. I'm just trying to figure out if there may be space in that corner area there, because they have to be how far from the property line? 3 foot.
For the shed, setback is
10-foot setback and 3 from the back.
I don't know, is it 10 foot?
10 from the side and 3 from the back.
It's the same even. But the only thing I would address there is what Mr. Susi brought up with the fact that we have cement slabs that are already around the property. If we now look at where the easement is and trying to fit something in there, then it's another cement slab that's poured, and we're definitely over the ratio. So I understand that P&Z said that not all 4 of the prongs were met for the recommendation. I don't believe the way our charter is reading that says if they didn't find the 4 prongs that we're somehow bound. Again, we're looking at these facts and going through each of the items on our own. And with the information provided by Mr. Susi, what I'm looking at here, the easement that's here, I don't see anywhere else that the shed could go. So the easement to me and the small lot is the special circumstance. the variance is required because they should be able to put a shed on their property. The granting of the variance is not detrimental to public welfare or injurious. And as far as 4, is it the minimum? I think, we've looked at the survey over and over, and it looks like it's the least thing that can happen here. But when the audience was sworn in, I swear I saw several people standing.
Yeah.
So if whoever else stood to get sworn in, I'd like to hear from everyone because we need the full record in order to make a decision.
And Madam Mayor, for the record, the minutes for the P&Z of December 17 is included on this agenda.
Is it? Okay.
On the consent agenda.
No, it's
It
consent.
doesn't say
Okay.
much, but it is there.
Can you give us 1 second to review that? Thank you so much.
And besides the advertisement, all the residents on the 500 feet radius received a notice of the variance.
I'm so sorry. I had to leave. I think the notice is served at the airport. Needs to cut out to stay workshop.
Thank you, Officer Caserta. Is there any question of Officer
Thank you,
Caserta before she
Christina.
runs
Good
away? Nope, you're good. Thank you. Go ahead.
Barbara Kuehl, 111th Street. One thing that you really need to consider for any variance is they may have the approval from the neighbors, but those are temporary situations. Neighbors move, the next person buying the house will be affected, and maybe they wouldn't like what they're going to see. And the codes were written trying to protect the aesthetics, the amount of development for the neighborhood. And I have a very narrow backyard, and I'm limited to what I can do. My land is really in the front, which it's just something when I bought the house, that's how I had to accept it. And I just sometimes wonder when I hear the variances being discussed that you want to make it happen no matter what. And I think you have to try to respect some of the codes, the reasons that things were put into place, and how it might affect neighbors 2 house sales away when they're looking over the fence. Or if it's a new commission, the fence gets torn down. We've all seen this, that it's not, there's no guarantee that it's going to be screened and it won't affect somebody else. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Kuehl?
Rox Ross, 11166 Griffin Boulevard. The agenda packet has a notice attached to it that was apparently mailed to the neighbors and also published in the newspaper. And it calls for a hearing on this variance to be held Tuesday, March 5th at 7 p.m. in the log cabin. Today is not the 5th. So I think that the notice that was provided is defective, and it's up, of course, to the village attorney to make that call, but it doesn't seem fair that people got notice for last week and the hearing didn't happen until right now. With regard to the code itself and allowing a variance, they should be provided, they should be allowed very scarcely, they should be very strictly adhered to, because this is a property right that you're granting forever. And it does impact the surrounding property owners who may not be the same people that are there today. I have no intention of opposing my neighbor. I think it's great, but the village has to go through its process, in the proper way, and I hope you apply the 4 prongs that are necessary for the granting of a variance.
Well, does it make sense to continue to go forward?
Okay. Commissioner Ross is right. We were just looking at the notice of public hearing. When this was originally sent out and published, it was for the March 5th meeting. We continued that meeting we postponed that meeting until tonight. And so from that perspective, this does need to be re-advertised. And that should be done at the expense of the village, quite frankly, because it's not the homeowner's responsibility. That error happened within the village, within the administration. So.
Okay, so that looks like we're at a halt.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. Unfortunately, that notice is not allowing us to go forward. I want to make it clear, though, the issue as it relates to the pergola, we can still research. If you get those affidavits, you meet the Miami-Dade County Code, then that issue can be dealt with and wouldn't need to be renoticed, although we may want to consider just renoticing everything. But I would agree that unfortunately we are going to need to renotice.
Yes.
Okay, so we will halt the, is the term, I'd like you to give me the correct legal term for this.
It needs to be renoticed, so it will, we need to renotice, and what we'll need to do is unfortunately have a full new public hearing.
Hearing again. Okay. Commissioner
I'd
Smurf.
like to make a motion to.
It's not.
What you may want is and I don't know that you need a motion for the village to undertake the renoticing, but if you want to have one just for that purpose, I'll leave that up to you. Again, I want to make it clear that that doesn't stop these property owners from moving forward to see if they can't comply with the other code provisions where that variance would no longer be required.
I have a question, because it needs to be advertised twice, and for the next meeting in April, we don't have time for that?
Right, it would have to be May.
So it has to be for the May.
It's going to have to be for the May meeting. You can announce for the purposes of this discussion when that's going to be advertised for. That's not sufficient for public notice. So I think for clarity, just because we announced that that's the date it's going to, that doesn't mean that's the date it's going to. So if it doesn't show up on that date, this is not notification. This is information.
Okay, so we will, there's a consensus to go ahead and renotice for May. Yes?
Very good.
Commissioners?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the petitioners coming in, and thank you for all those testifying.
We can't move forward with the public hearing, so after it's renoticed, that would be appropriate to give testimony. But like I said, for now, it's information that it's May. Until it's properly noticed, it's...
And if you could see if you could get the board member, that would also help us, so we could see from their perspective as well. So, because there's nothing in the minutes that's substantive enough to understand their decision. Okay, so we're going to move on to discussion on cell phones by Commissioner Samaria.
Okay, these are questions that I want to ask Christian, and hopefully you can answer them. First off, when I became a commissioner, and to fairness, when I became a commissioner, I approached Christian to have my own phone, and that I wanted to have a separate cell number. And for that reason, I did it was in case of Freedom of Information Act. So that was the reason why I did it. But I do have my own cell phone that I paid out of my own pocket and pay for the monthly fees out of my own pocket. So I just wanted to be sure that was on the record. Second is, what is the purpose of doing this when it has not been done in the past by other commissioners? Getting this phone doesn't stop, correct me if I'm wrong, stop me for anybody that wants to do a Freedom of Information request. Again,
no, it actually makes it easier. Quite frankly, if we are using our personal phones for business as well, then we have to go through and redact all the personal stuff off of it. Whereas with these phones provided by the city, if a commissioner, his commissioner decides no longer to be a commissioner, they just turn the phone back over to us. We've got everything archived. It's right there on the phone. We've got the records. Okay? Whereas if it's your personal phone and you leave and take your phone with you, then we have to get all that information off your personal phone. You have to go through, redact everything that's personal, and leave us with that. So.
Okay, how is the phone in a monthly service being paid for? Who is responsible for the phone in case it is lost?
Well, let's take one question at a time.
Okay,
Sorry.
but just for start, you had a comment, I think, Village. Did you?
If I could just make this statement, having come into working with the Village just about the time this issue is coming up, and having been in local government for 25 years, and watching as the public records law has moved to accommodate new technologies, many jurisdictions started off by everybody just having their own personal cell phones because you weren't texting as much and you weren't using that as a main form of communication. In the last 4 or 5 years, virtually every jurisdiction that I've gotten involved with, either larger jurisdictions and now smaller jurisdictions, has gone to not only having their own cell phones for business, but also assuring that that's better archived, because there have been a tremendous number of lawsuits over the last few years. In fact, I know folks who have inadvertently, I mean completely inadvertently, not in a negative way, had accidents with their personal cell phones. It hasn't been properly archived with the city, and they have had personal liability. So it is my recommendation to any jurisdiction, although it is a seemingly large cost to a smaller jurisdiction, the benefit and the potential cost in the future well outweighs the idea of trying not to spend the money on a business cell phone. It really has become the norm in almost every jurisdiction. So from a legal perspective and from a policy perspective, while I know it's not something you've traditionally done, it really is where you've seen most jurisdictions start to move to, for the exact reason of archiving in the long run, of assuring that there isn't an accident where information is unintentionally deleted. And there's liability both on the part of the jurisdiction and personal liability for no fault of anybody's. And you know, what it really is the better approach. And so I would highly recommend that you keep that and you move that forward as your jurisdiction moves forward.
Okay.
Commissioner Smeary?
How is the phone and the monthly service going to be paid for?
We do have room in the commission budget. We can take it from the education portion of that. Alternatively, we can come back to commission and ask for some of the contingency fund to be used for this. We got very good deals on the phones. They were, I think, $50 a piece, and these are for new iPhones. So it was
50 or 150?
It was 150. Excuse me. I'm sorry. And so 150 each.
And it's 50 a month.
And about 50 a month. So, I mean, it's not. We're not talking a great deal of money. We're talking what, $2,500 or so. So, I mean, it's not a great deal of money at all.
Okay. This one is two-part, but it's really for the same one. Who's responsible for the phone in case it's lost or damaged? And if it's damaged, who pays for the deductible? Because there will be a deductible, especially on a phone like that. It'd probably be about $150 if the screen is broken.
Yeah, it would. Well, we would probably just replace the phone if it were if it were damaged. If it's lost, then again it's village property. We would probably have it. I'll have to check and see if we have insurance on that specifically or not. So, but I mean, this is something that the village should pick up for the commissioners. I mean, you guys are here, you're putting in your time, you're not being particularly well compensated for it. Anyone that thinks they are, raise your hand. And so, I mean, this is going to be an expense. It can be an expense to you, or it can be an expense to the village. And for $2,500 a year, I think it covers you, it covers the village in the best possible way. It provides the most accurate archives. It allows us to do public records searches quickly and much more easily than we have been able to. So.
Okay, the biggest thing that I have is I don't understand why now and why wasn't it done in the past?
Well, lots of things weren't done in the past that are being done now and should have been. So, I mean, we have talked about this in the past before as a commission. I believe the last commission discussed it, and everyone sort of thought it was a good idea, and it didn't get done. As I advised you when you became a commissioner, I said, get a second phone.
No, let me clarify. We went over this.
Yes.
I went, the village clerk was there. I came to the village clerk and told her that I got a separate phone. I told you that I got a separate phone, and you said you thought that was a good idea. Don't say it that you made the suggestion when you didn't. I made the suggestion that I got the phone.
Whatever you'd like, Dan.
No, you got to state the fact.
I did state the facts.
No, you didn't tell me to get the phone. I got it on my
So.
own.
Okay, let's move on. Is there any other commissioner that wants to comment on this matter?
Yeah, I have a comment as well, but Commissioner Wise can go
Commissioner
first.
Wise, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, it just goes directly to what Manager Manners was saying about how this relieves the burden of our compliance with Freedom of Information Act requests. And a comment that I'd like to make on the topic. I can table that till later. I can read it now.
Whatever you prefer.
It's come to my attention that within the last month, there have been at least 6 very large-scale public records requests. I believe that freedom of information is critical to government transparency and is every citizen's right. However, the number, the very broad nature, and timing of the requests have been very taxing and expensive to our village administration, both in time and money. It is taking us away from what we were elected to do, the business of this village. I have discussed this with our village attorney and would ask for her to explore whether these excessive and seemingly coordinated requests rise to the level of harassment and abusive process. Of course, we will comply with all requests in a manner consistent with the Florida Public Records Law. I have been advised, however, that the village is under no legal obligation to do anything other than to provide public records. We are under no legal obligation to answer questions or otherwise create public records. To wit, having these separate phones will make that compliance that much easier. I know that I have spent quite a lot of time with my personal phone when the initial requests came in, and I'm relieved to have an easier and more technologically current mode of producing records and having them archived. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, real quick.
Excuse me. Respectfully from the audience.
Yeah,
no heckling.
Everybody, it gets rambunctious enough, so this shouldn't be something to be too rambunctious about. This is something that we have talked about prior. I've been in government service for 21 years.
Young man.
Yeah, and when cell phones came out, that's one of the things a lot of federal agencies did. They issued you a government-issued phone for that sole purpose, that if there's ever a freedom of information request, it's easier for the entity to pull the records, pull the phone from you. But with that said, I think that we are going to have to look at establishing some type of cell phone usage policy going forward. I know there has been some other municipalities that have had issues with some of their commissioners still using their personal phones, even though they're issued a city-owned phone. So I think we should develop, at some point, develop some policy basically setting ground rules and setting in place that all official business should be conducted on the city-owned cell phones. So that was just my 2 cents.
Mayor. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with our attorney's recommendation because of Freedom of Information Act, the request. It does make it easier. It's village property. But the only thing that I'd like, I guess, the rest of the commission to speak on is the cost, where the money's coming from, where is it coming out of in the budget, because we didn't have an opportunity to discuss that when the phones were picked up. Also, Manager Matters, you did mention about the insurance, and that's something that I think needs to be addressed because, as Commissioner Samaria said, if the phone gets damaged, it's village property, but what if you just have a completely absent-minded or clumsy commissioner that is breaking several phones and then the village is picking up all of that cost? I mean, there should be something where if this phone was damaged unreasonably, like, I think there's still points that need to be addressed in dealing with these phones.
And I do need to verify that we have insurance on them, so that is addressed.
I have another question, if I may, and that has to do with the whole purpose of this to me is to make it more transparent to the community and allow them to have access and be easier for public records, because I don't think people understand when you live and work in this area, your friends and some of the village business intermingle. So what I like about this is it'll allow an easier search, be less costly to the hopefully to the public record, the requester of those records. But I also would like to see that, make sure that, I think we have that ability now, but to make sure we can back up. One of the things we need to do is make sure we're set up to back up that stuff, so that we are being fully compliant with public records law. Because I think in doing this, I think that was one of the things that we just haven't set up yet. But I do think each and every phone needs to be set up to have a backup.
The emails and that sort of thing which go through the phone, no problem.
It's the text message and voice message.
But also, because these phones are owned by the village, we can call AT&T and say, provide us this.
The text messages, I do believe, we're going to have to find a way to back them up.
And I'll have to double check that.
And there is a way to do it, but
There's
in
cloud
the
backups.
iCloud. Yeah.
I'm not an IT professional, but I know when I've gone through this with other jurisdictions, especially in the more early days, or unless you have an incredibly sophisticated software, expensive software program, which I think is probably a little bit more than y'all need, there's a way to do either iCloud backups and other backups, and I would wholly recommend that that's part of your policy and procedure as it relates
And
to
I just like to make sure we're doing that, because I'm not an iPhone person, I'm an Android person, so for me, trying to figure out how to do that, I'm sure it's not a big deal, but I'd like to make sure that we're all five of us are doing that.
Just on that point, and what you and the attorney were speaking to, when I got the iPhone, I did a little research. There is a way that in your settings you set it up so that it's all text messages are then stored to the cloud. So that's one way to do it. There's also, I've identified about 5 different companies that do archiving of text messages. I don't think we need that expense. For one city, it was, for archiving purposes, it was $65,000 a year. So I don't know if we're at that point, but I'm happy. I can forward you those 5 or 6 vendors that I identified. If we just want to see, what the cost would be, because I know myself and probably some residents may want to know, okay, what about having a third party who can retrieve the information and store it, as opposed to relying on a commissioner who may not be technologically savvy to set up their phone. But I'm happy to send those to you tomorrow. And also,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I can send to you about the instructions on how you can back up your text messages.
Do you have policies as well for Fed that you could forward to the
I'll
manager
pull
as
up
well?
some of our cell phone
because
policies
that's already
from the work.
Yeah, that'd be very helpful. Okay.
Question? Yeah. If I'm going to have my own phone, how is that going to work?
We'll have to figure out a way to back your phone up as well. And so, and that's another question. Do we want to make it so that all 5 commissioners have to have a village-owned phone, or should Commissioner Samaria?
I'd like the attorney to weigh in.
There's a lot of different ways you can manage this issue. I think drafting a policy is the way to go. If you have, I will give an example. When I was the Tampa City attorney, I continued to use my personal cell phone because I was not obligated to use a city cell phone. At that time, they changed that policy in the middle. I had to undertake, and it became very annoying to me, frankly, and that's why I switched. I had to undertake my own processes, because if I didn't, then I was liable. Meaning, if I didn't comply with the public records law, the city of Tampa was not going to take on that level of liability. So you could put that in your policy, and then say, if you want to back this up yourself, that's fine. But you're going to have to be responsible for that. And if you're not responsible for that, then if there is a public records request that you can't be compliant with, we can't help you. You're going to have to take care of that yourself. So, and it is a personal issue. Some people don't want to have 2 cell phones. Or you can have a policy which says that you must use a city phone for all city business.
Technologically, they're learning how to split one phone to be able to do 2, and we're almost there. But even with that,
well, actually, you can do that with iPhones.
With iPhones, you can, but in Android, you cannot yet.
Okay. So if I have to take a city phone, then that means I lose part of my educational money, right? And being a commissioner, if it's yes.
No. I mean, it depends on what the commission would like to do. I mean, currently, what I'm looking at is taking because as manager, I have the ability to move funds within the commission budget. I can do that to provide these phones, or the commission can vote and we can use some of the contingency funds that we've set aside to pay for the phones, and it's whatever you guys would like. And so
Vice Mayor, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, if anything, if the money is coming anywhere, I would say that it needs to come out of the commission budget. I don't really want to go into contingency funds for this. But I agree with our village attorney that right now I feel like we're backing into this because we do need a policy, because if there is a commissioner, like Commissioner Samaria, that wants to maintain his own phone, or like I had no idea that I could split my phone and say, okay, I'll save an expense and I'll do it myself. But I think it's important to have that process, because I think every one of the commission members should know that they could be exposed to personal liability if they don't do it properly. So that the same way we want like due process, or we want to be transparent with our residents, it needs to be clear so that you can either opt in, opt out. It's like looking at a privacy notice that you opt in or opt out of. So I don't really know how we handle it right now, because I feel like the most important, now that we have these phones, we've got to get a policy in place.
So, is it the consensus of this commission to direct the manager and with the assistance of the attorney to come back with a policy for us within a short period of time for us, and then also look at funding sources as well?
If I may?
Yeah.
As a funding source, Manager Manners, I'd like you to just take my salary. Through some miracle of online banking, I've never received any compensation from the time I took office in the first place. I don't
Your
know.
check will be here tomorrow.
Oh, okay. We'll keep it, and every other check that comes during my term, and please put it towards this expense. And that will, I think, offset, at least for the first year, the $2,500 you discussed. I almost make that much money. So there you go.
Thank you so much.
Here's the question I have. Because I don't want the village to pay the expense of a phone, I'm going to be penalized, because then I'm going to be responsible for collecting all the information. It just seems like I'm being punished because I don't want the village or the residents to spend the money.
I think that's what my point of is why having a phone is important. You're bearing that liability now. If you don't save or back up or archive, I'm not saying that you don't. I'm saying as a general matter, if you don't save or archive that, you're bearing that expense, that liability. If you do all that, and the policy is you can keep your phone so long as you do all that, then this really is not necessarily going to be a problem for you. You have to look at it as a whole and say, well, we make sure that everybody does that. And I think that is why so many jurisdictions that I have been involved in have either mandated phones or been very clear that if you're not going to take the phone from us, and you either can't, there's jurisdictions that ban the use of text messages on personal phones. I mean, you can use it for phone calls, but if there's going to be a public records created, you have to use a government phone, or you can't use text message. Then when you violate those policies, you are taking on that liability. So I think there's a way to get it where you want it to be. It's just a question of writing the policy properly. And if you are willing to take on that responsibility yourself, and you want to say as a village, then you don't need to take the phone, then that's totally appropriate. It's just that right now every individual takes on that liability, and it's significant and it's really problematic, and why so many jurisdictions have changed their policy.
So if I may, because time is, just one more thing, because we're really getting through time frame. No, I'm not recognizing somebody in the audience.
Okay.
Thank you. Jenny, I'm sorry. Vice Mayor?
It's
No,
9.
I didn't.
Did you have a?
I didn't have
No.
anything additional.
Okay, so the consensus is for you to come back with a policy and a way to pay?
Okay.
Okay? Thank you. We're going to move on to Pelican Harbor. This is a quick one. Excuse me, I don't feel well. Forgive me, everybody here. Trying to get through this. On 12C, there was a request basically on their 40th anniversary, rather than having any type of money that we have to lay out, one of the requests was for us to be able to rent out give out a pass for them to use the log cabin for one of their quarterly mixers. We did this last year. Former Commissioner Ross was the one who brought this forth, so I would like to also continue that. on. If anybody would like to donate money, I know I have a couple residents that are willing to donate funding to help Pelican Harbor. They're a phenomenal organization, and they really help everybody in our community. So if there is no objection, I'll make a motion to... Go ahead.
My objection, I just want on the record that it's $1,500 that we'll waive tonight. That's what, so the cost is $500. $500 if non-residents times minimum 3 hours is $1,500. I have no problem with waiving. I just wanted
that is accurate.
Okay.
And I also want to...
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
I just wanted to...
For the record, yep, absolutely.
And I also want to note that I will volunteer my personal time to come in and staff this event so that there's no cost to the village.
And I'll be there as well with you.
Yeah, okay. Definitely. I'll be here too.
Okay. Is there, I'll make a motion to approve.
I second it.
Approve waiving of the fees for the log cabin for the quarterly mixer, and we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we'll move on to 12D. I'm not sure we'll get everything through here, but I'd like to basically, first of all, thank everybody. This is my brought it back, so I appreciate everybody who came to the code meeting on the 12th. What was done was working with staff and also listening to the tape again, was basically taking all the comments of the residents as well as the comments from staff and putting it here with the exception of number 1. So I'm going to hold 1 for last, if you don't mind. I'm going to basically look at the others and see if there's any objection, and then just point out what some of the high points are. Number 5 was base floodplain elevation, and the idea is you have to start it from base floodplain. I spoke to the building inspector, and that is how it's done. They also wanted both of these bullets to be the same, so the requirement in the tape was that we all would agree to 30 feet for all major second floors, but the 10-foot would be for the first floor. So the 10-foot setback for the first floor and 15 for the other, regardless whether it's a new construction or a major renovation. And that's the only change that was made here. I'm just going to go over it first, and then we'll go through it.
Say one thing. If when we do make it, I'll wait.
Thank you. Then the next section was what to do with construction bags. That was a conversation with the building inspector. We went back and forth on how to deal with it, and also with the public works manager. And the agreement basically was to limit the number and cubic yards of it, so you don't have like scattered all over the lawn in lieu of getting a dumpster. And so that's where the second from last bullet came from. And the other concern that the public works manager had was making sure that it's not in the right of way. The third one came from one of the residents, and that was assuring that the construction debris will not create an attractive nuisance, and so to put that on there as well. And the argument was with dumpsters, of course, you don't want people coming with those big, huge trucks and waking everybody up, but with the bags, the time frame didn't seem to matter. So that's kind of that issue. 7, I'm going to go over separately because that was something that's new and was not added. That is actually new. Finally, for traffic and public safety, these are just added for specific points. And I think there was an important part brought up from one of the residents was what to do with landscape. So with working with the public works manager, the thing was to put a time frame on it. So if you'll read the last 2 bullets, I'll read them out loud. Property owners who employ vendors, construction and other that need to block the local roads more than 30-minute time limit will need to obtain an MOT permit prior to commencement of work. The following cases are exception to that 30 time limit. Landscape maintenance vehicles and moving companies will be permitted to park on the swales or partially block the roadways what happened here? As long as they follow the MUTC safety guidelines and do not exceed 2 hours. And that was recommended once again by the Public Works Manager. The last one was delivery trucks that are too large to park on the driveway or swale will be permitted to park on the swales or partially block roadways as long as they follow the MUTC safety guidelines and do not exceed 1 hour. So there's an exception, longer period for landscape companies and moving trucks, and then everybody else would have the 1 hour. And then the other thing was they can't park down the street. They've got to park somewhere close to the actual property that they're doing work on. Number 10, just so you know, is not completed. They're still working on that. Staff did not complete 10. And then I'm going to go back now into 1 and 7, if I may. Excuse me for a minute, guys. I'm just not feeling well. Give me a second.
You said 7?
1 and 7.
1 and 7.
Which one?
And there was a missing number in here, so forgive me, but apparently there's a missing number in one of them. There was a lot of conversation that went back and forth on Saturdays, and there was a lot of really valid comments, like if you're home, I want to be able to work on my own property, I want to oversee the contractors, or I want to do the work myself. And the issue came down, after great discussion, was the noise of major renovations and large projects, so major renovation and new constructions. So this language is attempting to basically address that, while at the same time not impeding construction folks from doing work as long as it's not noisy on the weekend. So this is basically a compromise language that if you're having a short-term project, it's not major renovation, you're putting in a driveway, you're building and jump in here anytime you'd like, sir. You're not doing anything that's extensively lengthy in time frame. That work on Saturday between 9 and 5. So in other words, normal weekdays is 8 to 5, but on weekends we'll put it back an hour to 9 to 5. And the other thing was to ask for a special permit. Apparently other cities do this for interior finish work. They allow the manager to sign off on them for a special permit. So in case they're working on interior work, what that'll allow to do is the manager have some discretion, and contractors who have a reputation of doing things the right way and contractors who don't give you a little discretion there to make sure we're not having reoccurrence of large equipment on the weekends. There's one other comment I'm going to make, because that was suggested by the vice mayor. That one bullet that talked about what they could do between time frames was a positive. In this case, that language was completely stricken and replaced with, there are no restrictions for homeowners performing property maintenance on weekends. That does not require a building permit. So that took that language out. And finally, the Public Works manager asked me to add Public Works right-of-way for construction hours, so it's associated with, not with Comcast or that kind of thing. It's only with utility companies. So that took care of, I think it was Ms. Kuehl who commented on that. And the last one is number 7. And I apologize for the rush. It's just that we're getting late on time here. There was a comment made by, I believe it was Mr. Kennedy, that talked about restoring properties back to their original state so that you're not having to have a mess when you're done. So this actually takes that into account. I also talked to the building official, and that's where the language came from. It says required checklist of items prior to issuing a certificate of completion for all South Florida Building Code Level 3 renovations, which is basically major remodels or new construction, or a certificate of occupancy for new construction in order to ensure the aesthetics, restoration of the landscaping of the property adjacent right-of-ways. This would include examples: removal of all fencing, dumpsters, portable toilets, and 2, regrading of substrate and soil, and replacement of ground cover or landscape per code. And that is basically a summary of everything that's here. I hope I captured, with the assistance of staff, I hope staff and I captured most of what the comments were from the public. I did listen to the tape 3 times, and I also went over it with almost all the staff members, including the chief and the manager, Officer Caserta, and shaking his head in the back, thank you so much, is Public Works Manager as well. Are there any questions for me?
No. Marty, the other comment that I was going to make was that I think this is one construction that I think all the commissioners can basically agree on. What I'm trying to get at is, I think that when we do go into the doing of the actual ordinance, that we hire an outside company to do it, because I think that there's nothing that, like if residents want to add something and the boards want to add something, I think this is something that all the commissioners can agree upon when we get to that stage. That I would like to have it where we hire an outside company and see how the outside company does with this one, in case we want to use an outside company in the future for any other codes.
I think if you'll go back to the item, there were 4 items I asked for. One of them was number 4, which was exactly what you're suggesting,
sorry.
Commissioner Smeary. No, it's fine, but that was there. Okay. And I appreciate you bringing it forth, because I agree with you. I wanted to make sure that everybody was okay with the compromise for Saturday, unless there's objections from my colleagues. We can start with that one. Or any other language, or for that matter, anything in here that was changed.
I don't have an issue with what was added to 1, if that's what we're discussing, but I do agree with Commissioner Samaria that once the commission does agree on this, that we look into a professional company.
Absolutely.
Because the devil's going to be in the detail. There's some items, like the way it's written now, which I understand it's written here to get the concept, but we're having a hard time dealing with language that can be suggestive and allowing too much discretion and things like that. The emergency repairs issue, like for one, I was looking through our code of ordinance to see if it even addresses that type of issue as is right now, because I don't want a situation that's created where residents can find a loophole or a way to circumvent pulling permits. I think there needs to be like a check and balance.
A definition of what that is?
A definition of what an emergency is, a process of how it's done, meaning if a resident truly believes they have an emergency, that they have to be directed to the administration first, or the building inspector, or someone has to verify that that is indeed an emergency. Because then I just feel like it opens kind of a window for people to be clever and circumvent.
Yes, I agree. I was just at the P&Z meeting last night, and there was a resident that came in, wasn't coming before the board for a permit, but he was looking for guidance, having issues that this right here would address. And I spoke to the resident afterwards, and I told him, I said, you know what, we're working on that. Email me. I'll have a conversation with you. Let me know what is going on with your situation. But in my mind, as he's talking about all the situations he's going through with a certain contractor in the village, I'm like, yep, that's going to be covered. That's going to be covered. That's going to be covered. So I think we're on the right path. And what I think that the key part of this is going to be hiring a trained professional who actually knows how to write this into code, how to define what needs to be defined, how to make sure that the language is buttoned down enough so there's not those loopholes or wiggle room that currently with our current code, some individuals, contractors in the park take advantage of. So, this is a great start, but I think I'm really looking forward to seeing what the professionals come back with. And along that same note, I will be following up this week or next week with the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity regarding grant monies for land development code rewrites.
Oh, great.
So
timing's perfect.
So I'm going to talk to them about that. Once I have some more information, I'll send it out. I'll notify the manager of it, and then that way, we can bring forth to the commission and see.
We work so closely with staff that I jumped the gun a little bit. I should ask how you feel about hiring an outside company, if that was the way we to go.
If you don't mind taking that. I know you. I know he doesn't need a mic, but I'm going to make him go up there anyway.
I think it's an excellent choice to go back. Doesn't matter who you hire, but whoever you guys hire, that needs. I would like to make a recommendation to the board that whatever company is hired, but they work also with staff while they're continuing, tighten it up. Because again, I've always said this city is unique, and while they're still working and they'll tighten it up in the legal portion of it, but I would like to be also that they could work with staff, because there's going to be some questions while they twiddle along with it, but to have that communication with staff.
Yeah, I think we've learned. I learned the hard way with the driveway ordinance. The devil is in the details, the definitions, and how the land development code is written. I think our village attorney would probably concur with that experience.
Yes.
I do think this is a great start. I think this will address many of the problems. But I will tell you, I got a call. Somebody reached out to me this weekend regarding the same construction company. And they told me things that we can't. I don't even know how to address them, like living in the house without permission, breaking, refrigerators, and it's just kind of shocking. So they didn't know. Also having a dumpster in front of the house that they were using for another site, and then using their site to store stuff.
Happens all the time.
So yeah, I just don't know how that's not in here, because when I heard the story, I was like, I don't think we've addressed that. So I don't even know how to address that. So there are some other things that will crop up as you guys find the situation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Okay. So there's no objections with what's your... Okay. Consensus, we can move forward. All right. So then the only thing I asked was, moving forward, that staff go ahead and finish figuring out what the fines are going to be.
Okay.
And basically everything in blue.
We met today and started on that process.
Okay.
Because the fines on these, we don't necessarily want the fines in the ordinance. Well, I think
No,
we want
no.
them in the fee schedule
Yes.
so that they can be changed
Yes.
as this develops. So
That was the intent
Okay.
here. If it wasn't written, that was my intent.
Just wanted to be clear.
Yeah.
So.
So do we have a problem with a 3 and 4 and asking the manager to go ahead and work on the fines in the fee schedule and the fees as well, and then request the manager obtain quotes to write the ordinance for these changes? Nope. Okay, so you have your direction. Fantastic.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, thank you for everybody's patience. This was a long meeting tonight.
12E.
Nate? 12B?
I think we have one more. Oh, well, nope. You wanted to add one, so we have a 12E. It's canceling of meetings. Do you want to reschedule for that for the next time?
Let's put that for the next.
Okay, so we'll retract 12E and postpone it to the next meeting, okay? And he'll put a form together for that.
Oh, that's, yeah, let's move it for the.
Okay. Request for, excuse me, everybody, trying here. Request
Can
for-
Commissioner Samaria repeat the proposal of the 12B?
You said discussion on
Discussion
proper?
of proper procedures for scheduled meeting to be canceled.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Village Attorney, do you have any reports?
I don't today, but
Okay.
it's been a pleasure working with you all today. Thank you for having me.
Village Manager?
Yeah, we have a few things going on right now that we really need to discuss. First off, I met with Commissioner Wise regarding the communications meeting. It's currently scheduled for March 26th. We would like to postpone that to April 16th, and the reason for that is because we'll be doing a mailing village-wide to try and gather information to get as much participation as possible. So I want to make sure that all of you are available on the 16th. It's a Tuesday at 7 p.m.
What day you say, Friday?
Tuesday, the 16th of April.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
No problem.
That's true.
Commissioner Wise, I've already checked with you on that one. Commissioner Tudor?
Yeah, I should be good. I'll have all the tiers out of the way because the 15th is tax day, so the 16th should be good.
6 days.
Okay.
Different form of tax, okay.
So we should be good with that. And then,
You start with,
yes, the driveway ordinance, Commissioner Samara, you'd asked me about that. And that will be ongoing. We've been focused on the construction ordinance during this time. We will be looking into the driveway ordinance as well and continuing to move that forward. We'll do exactly what we did here with the construction ordinance and just, proceed that.
On a separate
So,
note,
yes.
have we got any update in reference to the chicken situation on this? It's supposed to be March, April, please, because I'm getting, you already know who the call's from, but anyway, so.
Yes. I've asked the clerk and code to make sure that we get the mailing out for a variance on that. We've got to reach out to the homeowners on that so that we can see if they've requested a variance, but they've got to, agree to pay the advertising and all of that. So once that's done, we will move forward with that. If not, then code will proceed and to ask them to remove the chickens if they don't.
At the at the art show that they had out here, the chickens got out and were running around.
Were they?
Yes, they were. So that's just something that I don't think we can have. Okay. Just my opinion.
yeah, I had a neighbor say the same thing, that the chickens were out, but that's going to come for us a variance, so we won't testify right now.
No, I know, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
I just wanted to- in case anybody didn't know about the chicken being out.
But
They
we
did
will
that.
see if that particular homeowner wants to proceed with the variance or not once they, learn the costs and so
And
forth.
isn't it, I thought the amount of chickens that they were allowed to have is part of it. I thought when you're having I don't know what it's called,
They're not allowed to have chickens in the village according to our code, period.
but when you're having, they use it as, what's the word I'm looking for?
Service mental support animal.
Mental support
Yeah.
animal. That- I don't-
Emotional support.
Emotional support animal. I don't think you need to have 4 or 5 chickens.
Can I suggest we table that?
Okay.
Because we're going to be having a variance on it, and I don't want to
Yeah,
testify.
I would agree. You don't know what's going to end up in front of you, and go ahead and allow that to go its course.
Okay. Village manager, you had that very important, you had some more stuff on your
And I
list.
do have some more stuff. There's an update from FEMA. We received letters from FEMA essentially declining or denying us our reimbursements. We go into an appeal at this point. It's not a big surprise. FEMA is, as I've mentioned to all of you, is an insurance company that first thing they do is say no, and then after that you fight them. We are currently appealing the 3 projects with FEMA, and our attorney, Ms. Mendel, our H2O partners, and our Public Works manager are working on the grounds for the appeal submittal. We don't know what FEMA will do, and that's the reality. H2O has expressed to us confidence that the village is on solid ground and that the grounds for the denial is incorrect. Part of that is that part of that was the procurement issues that we knew were there. Another part of it we found was that our project development manager with FEMA did not relay all of the information that we sent to him to his superiors, and so they made a decision based on partial information, and that's, you know, that we've clarified already, and so we'll be continuing to do this.
I did ask when I was up in the state, and Mr. Winklejohn will also confirm this, they're denying a lot of people.
They are, and I'm working with H2O regarding a contract extension, and that is something that we need to move quickly on. We are on a deadline with this, if we are going to continue with H2O, or if we want to go with a private attorney to handle the appeal, how we want to do this. And so I would like direction from the commission on that pretty quickly.
Manager Matters, can you expound a little bit on what are the current deadlines so that we're all aware and it's fully disclosed?
It was, I believe, 60.
It's 60 days. The letter was February 19th, I believe. 2 of the letters, and the other was March, I believe. So the first 2 are due, I think. I just remember looking at that and counting the calendar, and I believe it was March 18th for 2 of them, and I believe it's the following month for the 3rd one.
So March 18th, which was yesterday.
I'm sorry, I did that wrong. April. I'm so not feeling well. My apologies.
April 18th.
April 18th, and then the other one would be March for the other one.
No, April and May.
April and
Sorry,
May.
I'm really not feeling well, guys. Forgive me. Sudafed is not working well enough.
Or too well. And
Or
so
too well.
where are we on schedule to submit whatever we need to submit by those dates?
We are on schedule. H2O has requested an extension of their contract, and so with an additional monies, you know, for this, I'd like to negotiate that with them to try and get those down. Or if the commission would prefer to go with a private attorney, I need to get direction from you guys on how you'd like to proceed with that.
I have a question for the village attorney, because when the numbers that were being thrown around, I'm sorry, but I found them, as I expressed to you, exorbitant. And I also found that when I picked up the phone call to ask, and I called to inquire as to how they came up with those figures, from when you told me that, they never even called us back.
Okay.
And I'm disturbed by the fact the company doesn't pick up the phone. So I would like at this point to have our attorney working with us to make sure, because it's an appeal letter. And just so everybody knows, my understanding of what I've been informed is that the appeal goes to the state now, and the state has monies that are given to them, so we may be able to get the money directly from the state. That is my understanding, and I don't know if I'm correct, but some of the other monies go through FEMA. So the first, I believe it's the first, can you help me out with this, because you already know? Could you mind? Thank you.
Yeah, there's several phases of recovery money from Hurricane Irma. The first phase was obligated 6 or 8 months ago by the state of Florida, which means it was transferred. It was like in the $60 billion range. It was or $60 million range for this area. That money has been started to be let out, and the state, through KPMG, is giving that money out. And the later obligations are
And
still
that's the first part, like the first 5 days?
Basically your push and pickup type activities. So I don't know which your trimming and your stump removal, that kind of phased work was Category B or whatever, I forget the name, that is still stuck in the federal process and was not obligated by the state, which means transferred to the state, and then the KPMG, their contractors, giving that out. We've started to see checks, because I have about 30 or 40 clients that are getting checks. We saw some checks out of that first tranche of money, and now we're seeing denials or kickbacks from all of them on both sets. The money from the later phases and the first 5-week phases. So.
And your time frame, from what your knowledge is, in terms of us eventually.
Well, the appeal process is an ugly answer. It's a 60-day response for the client. It's a 60-day response from the first appeal office. Then it's a 120-day response from the federal government, which it adds up to essentially almost 300 days.
So it's a year.
It's about a year. 240 days. And I believe there's some margins in there too. So it's not a hard process. The level of sophistication of your appeal has flexibility depending on what they denied you for. Some of them are just simply forwarding a form. Some of them need an entire legal argument if it's nuanced. So I'm seeing all.
I would feel very comfortable if you would work with our manager and our attorney on this process.
It's vital. Happy to help.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any comments from Commissioner?
Yeah, just real quick. Yeah, this is a common problem for a lot of municipalities. I know one of the cities, I think City of Miami, is dealing with the same issues with FEMA denying. It's my personal opinion that the denial that they gave is easy to defend against. One of them has to do with the procurement process, where they claim there was no competitive process in place by the sister that we piggybacked off of, and which it's 10 minutes research, and there's a whole process from that city with everything. With the
Since you do this as well, would you be so kind as to provide your knowledge base and so forth with?
Commissioner Tudor's already provided us a response to these. So,
yeah. These letters are similar to the things that we put out when
said delicately.
So yeah, there's definitely the biggest claim was denying based on the procurement, and that was completely, like I said, 10 minutes of research and there's everything. The city that we piggybacked off of met all the requirements. They had everything based on how they came to their decision. So yeah, I'm happy to continue.
And they never asked us. That was the other thing that I had heard from you, managing managers. They had never even asked us for an RFI, request for information, regarding that, and they made a decision without even asking for information.
Yes.
And then the person who we were reporting to, the PGM, is that correct? Did I say that correctly? Josh. Just in a day was gone.
Yes. We received an email from him saying, "I'm gone, and here's your new person." That was it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So.
The only question I have, maybe I missed it. How long is the appeal process going to go? Because we're going to be coming up to hurricane season.
I would use round figures of it. Well, it's exactly why I'm interested in helping and I'm very concerned about it. It's about a year before you may get your answer. About a year. So that's 8-12 months, somewhere in that range. Obviously, June 1st, we're starting another hurricane cycle. Almost all jurisdictions that I know of are not built for 2 storm recoveries. And not being refunded from one means the second one we have to have a plan for it. I'm already working on that.
I was just going to ask, are we working on a plan in case we don't win this appeal?
Yeah, I mean, there's a multiple forked approach in finance. They're all painful, and we're going to go down every one of them. I don't know the answers yet, but we're going to do it. Okay. We'll be ready. You may have to take your phone away. I don't know.
Finally, didn't have his phone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. So the next question is, do we want to continue with H2O working on this? That's the next question. And
I'd like the attorney to weigh in a little bit.
My question is, has H2O been at fault in any reason? Are they?
Not that I see so far. They provided all the information to
so
FEMA.
They've been representing us correctly.
I believe they have, yes.
I think
Hold on, village attorney, then vice mayor.
in the conversations that I've had, I think the concern isn't that they wouldn't do a good job, it's just that they need a contract extension because this would have been included, but their contract has expired, and the fact that they're suggesting that the amount of money they would need in order to move forward to assist us was pretty significant. Might I suggest that maybe I try and call with the village manager, and so that way we can maybe see if they were interested in partnering, not just taking over the whole thing, and what that would cost, and we can bring that information back to you. I reviewed what your denial letters were, and they seem to be based upon things that we can answer, but because it appeared that HTO did do a good job and their contract got paid, it probably is not the worst idea to see if they're still willing to partner with us. If it's outrageous, the cost, I don't know that you need them, but I don't want that to be a reason why the federal government's wondering why they aren't involved now. And the federal government does what the federal government does. For whatever reason,
Sorry,
the federal
Will.
government does it.
Okay, thank you. So does everybody accept that consensus? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that was going to be my comment that, whether it's an attorney or H2O, I really want our village attorney involved in this, not just because whatever they're asking for to extend their contract and take care of this, but because part of the denial and what happened in this situation, we have somebody that was supposed to be relaying information. They were obviously negligent. That it's like I see maybe other legal issues that might crop up, and I want our village attorney to be able to attack those right away so that we don't foreclose anything in the appeal process, if I'm making sense.
Absolutely.
I think also our lobbyist has been helping us with the state, and I know that Gray Robinson, we had already spoke, has folks as well up in the state. And
Rebecca mentioned that we have, as part of our firm, the Eris Group out of D.C., who's been very well known up there, and they have now come into our firm, and so they might be able to also provide some assistance. So.
That would be very helpful.
Right.
That would be very, very helpful. Thank you. So anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay. Board and committee reports, we don't have any. Last comments by commissioners. Any? No. I just want to thank you for flying down here and making sure we had proper representation, and I appreciated working with you this week. It's been very helpful.
Like I said, it was a pleasure to come down and see this wonderful building and get to work with your jurisdiction.
Thank you. Announcements? Village Clerk?
Yes, on Thursday, March 21st, 2019, 7 p.m., we have Parks and Parkway Advisory Board. Wednesday, March 27, 2019, 7 p.m., we have Public Safety Advisory Board. Monday, March 28, 2019, 7 p.m., we have Code Compliance Board. Monday, April 1st, 2019, 6:30 p.m., Planning and Zoning Advisory Board. Our next regular commission meeting will be Tuesday, April 2nd, 2019 at 7 p.m. We have a commission, the commission workshop is going to be postponed for April 16 at 7 p.m. And St. Patrick's Day celebration will be at the Edinburgh Recreation Center Saturday, March 30th, 2019, 7 p.m.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Meeting adjourned. Okay, 4-1.